Welcome back to another edition of
The
the
Rodcast Monday edition of
Rodcast, and we got so much to discuss and so little time to do it. I know we got 4 hours, but there is a ton to get into. Of course, Texas football will be the top topic that we'll get into all today. We'll break down Arch Manning's performance. We'll also get into the Longhorns' win over Mississippi State, dive into the details, and review it from every different angle. We'll slap it up, flip it, and rub it down for you. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian when we go behind the burnt orange curtain next segment. We'll also get to NFL news, notes, and nuggets. Texans come out with a big win. CJ Stroud showing off his clutch gene. We'll get to that coming up next hour. We'll also get into some of the other big topics of conversation going on with the NFL. A couple of Longhorns actually did get the chance to showcase Xavier Worthy. Dropped his huggies, I believe is the term for a rookie that has a big game. We'll get into that coming up. Helps the Chiefs stay at 4-0, even though it didn't look pretty. We'll also have your usual favorites. We got Rod's Ranch. We got Who Said That. We got Off the Record. We also got the topic for the big fat poll of the day. We also will get into some other things on the show today. We got to get into. Before we do, let's introduce you to the rest of the crew. He's one of the hardest working members of the ARN family. Got a hustler spirit. Not sure what he's paid, but I'm pretty damn sure the man is underpaid. Ain't no 401k for this hustler, and he's a hustle man of many talents. It's our friend, co-host, and neighbor. It is Patrick Davis Show. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing good. It is it's gonna be a good sports week, Rod. We're getting into it. Baseball. The season wrapped up over the weekend. I guess there's technically a doubleheader today, wrapping up because of weather delays. But we are in the playoffs start tomorrow, and then Friday, NBA preseason begins. I know.
You are a sick mofo.
Way too early for that to be happening, but it is true.
You are. I got it.
The preseason begins, so
you are a sick mofo for that one. That you're actually paying attention to it.
I didn't set the dates. I just know what's happening.
Wow, Mo, but you're going to be watching it. That's why you're sick.
I'll be watching some. I won't be watching all of it because there will be football on that I'll be watching instead of playoff baseball and football takes precedent over preseason basketball.
Yes, I would hope so. Yeah, you're not that crazy, but you're actually one of the people that's going to be paying close attention to NBA preseason, which is good. I'm glad. So we get the update. We're this year.
Yes, it does. We are getting to where we are getting again to a heavier sports season where there will be, basketball coming back. College basketball begins in November. You get into some college basketball, and so you start out getting a little bit more. You get the playoffs running through the rest of October.
Your palette a little bit, your sports palette.
Yeah, you get some fun stuff to go watch coming up here. So, but I'm looking forward to it because, we have not seen much basketball. We'll start to see rosters coming together. There's a big NBA trade over the weekend as well.
That's true.
We saw that. So it's all starting to happen. It's starting to happen where I get to watch my basketball again, but it's football season. And I'll tell you, having a really good football team to watch, it helps.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's been some other seasons, Rod, where I kind of had to watch basketball.
That is true. Yeah. Well, you'd rather be distracted by basketball. Yeah. No, we don't report about that though. Yeah. Other seasons where you'd welcome a distraction. No, I think now even those Longhorn fans are upset because the Longhorns didn't play to the standard that they talk about all the time. You still blow a team out and not play to a standard means your team is really damn good.
Yeah,
you can complain about that. Crying from a yacht, baby. Crying from a yacht.
You know who else is really damn good? My co-host. He's a proud alumni of DBU. He's got more papers than Dunder Mifflin and watches more film than Siskel and Ebert. He is the new Rod Father of Austin Sports Radio, Mr. Rod Babers.
Appreciate that intro. Yes, and tomorrow we'll be sure to start talking some playoff baseball. We'll do that. We will not ignore playoff baseball, especially because the Astros got a nice storyline there with their first round matchup. So we'll get to that coming up tomorrow. And thanks to Patrick for reminding us of that. We'll also get to the Horn headlines here in a second too. We'll get to we'll hear from Arch Manning actually, and hear from Steve Sarkisian. We'll hear from him a little bit more on a more expanded level from his post game. When we go behind the burnt orange curtain, but we'll hear from him talking about his quarterback in the post game, like right on the field, right after the game. He got a chance to speak with the field reporter, and I thought what he had to say was interesting. And Arch echoed the same thing when he spoke to the media, and I think it could end up being a collaboration that could be as honestly, it could be as fruitful as any that Sark has ever had in terms of his quarterback development, which he is also known for being a quarterback guru too. So we'll get to it. We'll critique Sark's performance as the play caller too with Arch, and also critique Arch's performance and get into that too, because it was remarkable. It really was. His growth from start one to start two. That's when I use the term prodigy. That's what I'm talking about. Like that leap, that exponential leap of improvement, that's what you get from a guy that, has all the upside to be a, potentially a Heisman Trophy winner or 1-1 in the NFL draft. He's got that kind of ceiling, and he flashed it against, I know it's Mississippi State, but Mississippi State still's got SEC talent. For his second start of his career, that was beyond impressive. It really was. I mean, at 5 incompletions, probably should have had 400 yards passing if Jonte could catches the football. Not hating on John. Everybody makes mistakes. Trust me. You go pull up the film, Rob. He's got plenty of them, so I ain't judging. I'm just pointing out that he had 5 incompletions, and one of them was just a drop pass. I mean, that was phenomenal. That was a great performance. I don't think I've seen a more. I'm trying to think of how often I've seen a young player, inexperienced player play that well in that situation, handling the pressure of being a Manning, of course, but also playing. Pro Football Focus has him as the highest graded quarterback in the country in Week 5. Like he was, like they have him as the highest graded quarterback in all the country. Period. In Week 5, not just for a freshman, not in SEC play. No. He said he's the best quarterback in Week 5. Period. I don't know how often that happened with even a great quarterback. Quinn was a quarterback with real high ceiling, getting their second start, and then against conference play, power conference play. I'm sure there are a lot of great examples of it. Hell, you probably can throw out maybe a Johnny Manziel or something. I don't know. I'm sure that, but if you're gonna throw out those types of examples, I'm talking about that kind of ceiling he has as a player. And trust me, I don't know why I threw out Johnny Manziel of all players, but I'm just talking about inexperienced players who basically they're early on in their careers were able to have a dominant performance. And yes, I know it's Mississippi State, but still, I don't give a damn who that was against. 5 incompletions, 26 of 31, 335 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 3 big time throws, 0 turnover worthy plays, which that shocked me too. Like, I don't remember a play where the ball was in harm's way.
Yeah.
With him.
Yeah, I don't think.
I'm trying to think of a play where the ball was in harm's way with him.
No, that where he threw it just an unwise pass that worked out.
Because ULM, we saw that. ULM, you saw it a few times. There was a few times where he was like, I don't know about it. Had 2 picks. Like, I'm not sure about that throw. I don't know if the ball was in harm's way with him. Like, I'm trying to think of it. And usually, he wasn't 1 or 2 plays.
Yeah, there wasn't. His short yardage passes were better.
The screens were better.
There was just a lot of things. But yeah, you're right. I remember a couple of them where he threw some, and you saw guys cutting on him in ULM, and he just didn't see a guy cutting. But he didn't really seem to even have those in this game. I mean, in a game where a lot of it was sloppy, he was not.
Yes. That's a great point. That's a great point. There was distractions all around him because guys were not playing at a really high level, and he did not let that drag down his performance at all. He challenged guys to get on his level. So it was remarkable. Like I said, Pro Football Focus, you can, if you like them or not, but even it matches the eye test. My point is that their grading system, I look at it, does it match my eye test? It matched the eye test. I don't know if a quarterback played better than what I seen him play. Like I said, I'll consider the competition as well. But hell, I didn't even throw in the rushes. He probably should have had 2 rushing touchdowns. They took the highlight away from him, and it was a beautiful rushing touchdown. Where he tiptoed the sideline and then dove to hit the pylon. And you're like, that's a Manning? Like, that's a Manning. I don't know. We never.
That was it too. Is we saw last week again. We talked about it last week where it was very much you stay in that pocket. Do not move it. Don't do not try and run. And this week he did have a couple runs where he saw it and just said, it's there. Just take that yardage right there, as opposed to trying to force something in. And so he did that a little bit better this week too. Now he doesn't need to get down.
One play. Yes, there you go. So that's the one play where I can say the ball was in harm's way, even though the ball never came loose.
you as a quarterback, you can't be taking that kind of hit. So you put yourself in harm's way and the ball. And he told him, hey, my grandparents always tell me to slide. I was like, hey, this is your grandparents, son. You know what the hell they're talking about. You need to slide, learn to protect yourself. So, yeah, that's a young quarterback thing. So maybe that's the one play. I could say that. Maybe that's the one play where the ball could be in harm's way because as a quarterback, you take a hit like that to get, there's a chance. Not only could you get hurt, but also, you know, they could jar the ball loose. So there you go. One play. All right, there you go. We found one.
One play where we say that was
we found one.
You made a mistake. It wasn't even like because he took a hit and everyone, but still on that one, even as much
he was trying to get down.
He was trying to get down, but it was also you're like if that's Quinn, I'm a little bit because but Arch is a little bit bigger too, so I don't think it was it wasn't as bad of a hit. If you were if you was a smaller quarterback, that would have been a really bad hit. But he was a big enough guy that he delivered some back on it, so it wasn't terrible, but it was also, you're right, you shouldn't take it because
because it's just
anything can happen.
Situation, Quinn is out.
Yes.
Quinn's in street clothes. You're the, what I mean, for a lot of reasons you don't take that hit, but hey, he's tough. He bounced up. It wasn't even a big deal. But that'd be the one play. I guess we got to find something to critique because you say it was a perfect performance. But it was as close as you can get. I mean, he was pretty damn close to it. And I will say this too about just overall, and I've said this about the scramble period by quarterbacks. And I'm telling you, it's starting to become more of a theme all around because coaches are now, there are some coaches, and Sark's not into it, but he's going to have to get into it, that are encouraging their quarterbacks to scramble. Like, hey, man, no, use it. It's the most effective play in football, guys. It really is. Like, it's average in the NFL. It averages 8.5 yards per play consistently. It's when the play breaks down. There's nothing you can do about it. I want to say C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins, we'll get to that later. Out of the 151 yards he had, 102 of them were on scramble drill.
Yeah.
Remember I told y'all C.J. was going to start scrambling? He's like, nah, I got to add that to my repertoire. Just like I add the no-look pass when I saw Matthew Stafford do it. And just like, just like Quinn added the no-look pass. What did Quinn also add? Scrambling.
Yep.
You have to. You got, as a quarterback, you got to add it. You got to add it to your repertoire. I mean, you have to have that because it changes the dynamic completely when the defense has to account for you scrambling, and it changes the numbers dynamic. And I will say that Arch, he's a savvy scrambler. Now, I did have the one where he got pent up. Got to find a way to slide or keep yourself safe. But on the run, where you probably should have given the touchdown, the long run. Go watch him initially and look how awkward it looks, because at first he doesn't just commit to scrambling because he knows they may cut me off and they could have the angle. He initially keeps his head up and the ball in a position to throw, even as he's running, because he basically wants all the defenders to have to still respect his ability to throw the football down the field. And he freezes a lot of the defenders just for that little half second. And then you wonder, how did he get the corner? How the hell did he? I know he's fast, but he didn't look that fast at the time.
Yeah.
Because he freezes the defenders. They have to. It's almost like, it's not quite like VY's famous pump fake, where he gets the defender jumping into the air. But essentially, he is trying to accomplish the same thing. I got to freeze these defenders so they don't just come straight at me and come downhill and close the angle on me. And then either I don't get as much yardage or I don't get the first down scrambling. And that was a savvy move by him. It to me, because I was like, why did it look so awkward? Went back and watched it. It's because he understands. He's like, no, I got to freeze these defenders. I'm going to freeze them. And then I'm going to see if I can get some more yardage. And it worked out perfectly. It's potentially going to be a lethal combination with him and Sark and his ability to also run. And I think, I said this on a show earlier this year after watching him in the his first action when he came in the UTSA game. And someone said, well, Rod, do you think Texas can win the national title without Quinn still? And I said, I do think so. It's weird. I think if he can take the type of leap and improvement from start to start, because him being a prodigy, I actually do. I mean, think about how good, when I talk about prodigies, I use that term, I'm very, very conservative with it. I don't just throw it out there. And I've talked about it with Bijan. When you first see Bijan, it didn't matter that he was a freshman. He could still perform at a level that was on par with the best backs in college football at the time. He just could. He's just that good. I've used that term recently with Colin Simmons. That he's one of those guys. There's some guys when you initially see him, you already know. Oh, I don't need to see a lot of him. I know that guy's got not only the potential to play on Sundays, he might have like some first round kind of potential, easily.
Yeah.
And he's a prodigy. So the more prodigies play, the more it's just like the ones that are academic prodigies in the education system. That's why you skip them ahead 2 or 3 grades. Like, we're holding them back. Them dominating their peers is not helping them. I need to challenge them more, give them more. So Colin Simmons is playing more. I don't think Colin Simmons has a start yet. But the more he plays, better he gets.
Yeah.
Same thing with Arch. The more he plays, the better he's going to get. And that's usually kind of the way. Now, this happens for everybody, but not at the accelerated rate of a prodigy. Everybody, the more it's 10,000 hour rule, right? Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah, the more you practice, the more reps you have, the better you'll get. But it takes you 10,000 hours to do it because you're just a normal human. You're not a prodigy. It took me 10,000 hours to do. It took me a lot of work, all right, to try to get, to achieve all of the things that I've achieved in my life. A lot of work because I'm not a prodigy. I've seen prodigies, though. I've been around them, and they have an accelerated rate of development. Where it takes you and I 10,000 hours, it just takes them 1,000. They got it done. And I think Arch I think he's one of them dudes. And like I said, when I said that initially earlier this year, I was like, man, that's a lot. That's hyperbole. I mean, I could be being very hyperbolic. I said, but I said it so quickly. I was like, man, I must believe it. And I didn't see much of him. I was I think he can, if he, because Texas is good enough to support him while he goes through the growing pains. And then once he gets done with the growing pains, he could look, you can start seeing more of the upside and less of the downside. Basically, that second start is what I was talking about. Better competition, too. Think about the ULM. He wasn't even playing the same amount of competition. I mean, the same caliber competition. He played against the SEC caliber athletes and was not just better, he was exponentially better. I do think now, I'm saying he's going to be like that against Georgia or anything, but I'm just saying the more he would play, the better he'll be.
Yeah. And
that's what that second start showed me, period. Yeah. That's what Colin Simmons is showing me right now. The more he plays. I think you got a couple of Ryan Wingo, I think, is in the category. Kelvin Banks was like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kelvin Banks, so like, okay, they got one. He's a prodigy. He's been elite since he stepped on the field.
Yeah, Kelvin Banks from week 5 of year 1 was a projected top 10 draft pick.
Exactly. He's like, okay. Yeah. He's like, yeah, we all know that about Bijan. We saw Bijan was like, oh, what? He's better than everybody else.
Yeah.
Why don't they just play him more? He's better. It was like, why isn't Tom Herman playing him more? He's better than everybody. Yeah. Every running back I've seen in the country, really. He's better than those guys. And that surely rang true. Sometimes the eye test will tell you.
No, you watch that Alabama game and you watch Ryan Williams and you just go, oh, I bet that guy's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. You ain't got to be in some elite football mind to go, well, he's better than anybody I've seen. That's amazing. Yeah. That guy is legit, 17 years old. And like I said, don't let your eyes aren't lying to you about Arch. He's that good. He's going to be that good, guys. It really is. He's got that kind of upside. I don't see anything deterring that right now or derailing that. So anyway, we'll get back to some Arch. We're going to hear from Arch and also hear from Sark too. But first, let's get updated. Let's get educated. Let's get informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn Headlines.
All right, your Horn Headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the MLB, the Astros finished their regular season winning both games against the Guardians before the game Sunday was canceled due to a long rain delay. The Astros are now set to take on the Tigers and former manager A.J. Hinch in the AL wildcard round starting Tuesday. And the Rangers wrapped up their season by sweeping the Angels with several young players coming through in the final games. The Rangers finished with a 78-84 record on the season, and Nathan Eovaldi was able to pick up his 12th win of the season in the final game. In the NFL, the Texans came back to score a touchdown with 18 seconds left to beat the Jaguars and improved to 3-1 on the season. The Vikings and Chiefs remained undefeated after wins on Sunday. However, the Chiefs fear that Rashee Rice may be lost for the season. Tonight, the Titans look for their first win against the Dolphins, and the Seahawks try to stay unbeaten against the Lions. And in the college football, Texas got a win over Mississippi State 35-13 with Arch Manning throwing for 324 yards and 2 touchdowns. However, they dropped to number 2 in the rankings after Alabama topped Georgia 41-34. Texas now gets a bye week to rest some players before the Red River rivalry the following Saturday. And that is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. Appreciate those. All right, let's hear from Steve Sarkisian. And he was on the field with Arch right after the game. And he was talking about the relationship he has with Arch. And he's got a smile on his face. And he wasn't really happy about the game and the way the guys played overall. But they found a way to win the game. I'm sure he was ecstatic about the way Arch played in terms of his team. I'm sure he didn't think they played to the standard, and he wasn't happy with himself. Also, we'll hear from Sark because he talked about how he was disappointed in one of his decisions to take some points off the board for the Longhorns, and so we'll get into that later. But here is Sark talking about the coaching dynamic between he and between Arch, and both of them refer to it in the same way. They describe it the same way. Here is Sark first. Oh, maybe hearing some
ready to go, and I think Quinn's probably helping Arch with me ripping his ass. Even though he's 26 of 31 for over 300 yards, I was still ripping his ass today. But that's what we do around here.
That's a lot of voices in your head, Coach and Quinn.
So it did. Now listen to Arch in the post game. That was directly on the field. Arch is like standing right next to him too, actually, while he's making that statement. And here is Arch in the post game. And listen to the way he describes the coaching dynamic between him and Sark.
Did you have fun diving into the end zone today?
What?
Did you have fun diving into the end zone?
Yeah, I thought I was in. I thought I was in.
You were.
Yeah, well, I think that's the good thing about Sark is he always coaches me pretty hard. You should come to a practice. It's pretty intense.
So. Can you get us in?
Yeah.
I think you maybe should have slid on that 8-yard carry.
Yeah, my family's gonna get mad at me for not sliding. I think every time I call my grandfather, he says get down or get out of bounds. So I probably should have done that.
Shout out to Corey Mose over at KView. That's where we got that audio. But he once again saying Sark's coaching me hard, and you can tell when he's actually there's some of the touchdown passes, and Arch is coming off the field, and everybody's happy and ecstatic, and you can tell Sark is like he's giving him details about something that he might have missed, or there's something on the drive that he wants to talk to him about. Hey, on play 3, Sark's of course, I'm sure he's very encouraging and supportive and complimentary of him, but you can tell there's also some hard coaching going on while everybody else is celebrating. And that too is, I think, is a good sign, right? That's why the Mannings wanted him here. They wanted him here for hard coaching. I think that's why they signed off on Sark being the guy. They wanted him coached hard. They didn't want him getting the Manning treatment in that respect as a 3rd, 4th generation, whatever Manning. They was like, no, because go somewhere and some coach is going to treat him, like he's a celebrity. And we need him treated like he's a young quarterback who needs coaching, who needs to improve and get better every day. And I think the hard coaching's on purpose. I think that's why they talk about it in that way, that, hey, when everybody else is celebrating how great you are, I'm going to be on your arse. I'm going to be on you.
Yeah.
Just so you know. But remember, this is what we agreed on. Just so you know, I love you, but I'm going to do it because I see your potential. You got 1-1 potential. And if we don't get you to 1-1, you know whose fault that is? Mine. Because you got all the tools, you got all the resources, you got everything, and you got the genetics, you got the family history, everything for D1-1. If you're not, and you don't go to New York for the Heisman, it's on me. That's it. And I think Sark understands that. That would be on him because he's got that kind of upside. That's why the hard coaching. Love the hard coaching. All right, let's talk about and by the way, I'm glad Quinn's coming back, and I'm glad they decided. We talked about it all week. Arch needs to play. Rest Quinn. You don't need Quinn for the game. And I think ultimately it was all gamesmanship. I don't think.
Well, what I think that was a report, which makes it true, is that Quinn wanted to play, and Sark was trying to give him the respect all week to not tell him, dude, you're not playing. I don't care what you do. You're not playing. Why would I put you in this week? And so I think it was much more respect for Quinn, and he didn't. But you could. The reports were everybody I talked to is basically it's like, no, Quinn wanted to play this week, and he kept basically trying to campaign for himself to be able to get in the game. And so Sark didn't want to come out and shoot him down on Thursday or Friday, and then eventually had to have the heart-to-heart and like, man, get healthy. I get it.
I mean, it's I mean, the courtesy. I'm sure that so maybe for everybody and maybe for Quinn's own psyche, hey, we're gonna play this thing out to Friday. I think in Sark's mind, though, so maybe I should say in Sark's mind, I don't think he was ever gonna play.
I don't think so either. Nope.
I think
But at the same point, I appreciate that Quinn wanted to play, and Quinn is that competitor.
No doubt.
I appreciate that as well. So, but I'm with you. It seemed more from everything that came out kind of on Friday and Saturday, when we still didn't even hear that Quinn was starting on Friday, when Sark said, "Oh, we'll tell you on Friday," and he still didn't. That was never. He knew on Thursday who was starting. But he was like, I just gotta get Quinn on board with this.
Yep. He's basically like, I gotta sell it to Quinn.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I'm gonna do that. I'll take the week to kind of sell it. But but in his mind, I think Sark knew that no, I'm not risking the entire season because you need Quinn. I mean, like I said, I think you still could be in the championship conversation with Arch, still make the playoff. But with Quinn, I think you are the best team in the country right now with Quinn. And I don't know if I can say that with a young Arch. I think it's possible by the end of the season, but that's a different journey than the journey you're going to be on with Quinn. Just because you don't have to, he's an experienced quarterback, third year in the system. There is more stability and there's more of a baseline of consistency of what to expect, even though the expectations now for Arch are going to be through the roof. But we know what to expect from Quinn. I mean, I think at this point we all are comforted by the consistency that we've seen from Quinn. You know what I mean? Week in and week out, and now that he's a third-year quarterback in the system. So there's no doubt. We always celebrate Arch, but there's no doubt. Quinn's the guy, and Quinn gives you the best chance to win a championship this year. Gotta let that be known. Okay, so let's talk ultimately why Longhorn fans are freaking out a little bit about the performance. This is what I'll say. I think it was a nice wake-up call for the team, just straight up. It was a good wake-up call. Yeah. A lot of self-inflicted wounds, the penalties, the turnovers. I mean, Jaden Blue was basically benched. Yeah. From everything that we're hearing because, fumbling twice in the game in critical moments. And
not even fumbles where they're not really even excusable fumbles.
Yeah, he didn't get rocked or anything.
Yeah, well, it wasn't even like a guy just got a really good shot on you. You know, when you see that and a guy gets a punch and it's just like, dude, he timed it. Like that happens 100 times in a game, and 1 out of 100 he maybe hits the ball dead on. Like that wasn't that. They were both fumbles and like the second one when he was just on the ground and the ball came out, you're like, you're not even gonna jump for it. You're gonna lay there.
It just seemed casual. I mean, that's why everybody missed it. He was just so casual. It was like, why are you so casual?
You had to be down. Like he had to know he was down when that happened because he doesn't seem to
like,
be
there was
worried.
A fight for it. It's like,
I think that one was more where you just said, wait, why are you acting like you were? Because you weren't.
We thought you down because you didn't seem. There was no urgency. You didn't seem concerned.
Yeah,
you just got up casually, like, yep, it's all good. Yeah, so he got benched. So he honestly, that's pretty much symbolic of the performance of the Longhorns, right? I mean, Jaden Blue, at one point, I described him as a catalyst of the offense, and then in that game, they had to essentially bench him because he was turning the football over, and he didn't get that many touches to be turning the football over. It wasn't like they were using him as a workhorse, but Trey Weisner played well. But ultimately, this is why I think it was good. And this is why I think Texas didn't dominate, and maybe it's something I didn't account for either. Listen, SEC athletes are a little bit different. They're a little twitchier. They're a little stronger. They're a little faster. I think the exposure to SEC athletes also played a role. And Jeff Lebby had a really good game plan too, by the way. His game plan was essentially play keep away. And we talked about that. If you can convert against Texas and control the ball, that's really the best way to win. It's just to not let Sark's offense on the field. That way you deny the run. We talk about that, that character, that run that's characteristic of a Sark offense, that it's going to happen at one point during the game. The run didn't happen until the end of the game. Like in the fourth quarter, basically, that I think that first touchdown to start the fourth quarter is what starts the run. And then the game is out of reach. But it was this game was a one-scored game pretty much until then. And that's because Jeff Lebby just played keep away. It's a good game plan by Jeff Lebby.
No, I mean, that. No, and I don't, neither one of us was going in that week going Mississippi State power run team. It's going to power run on you. And but they knew it. They understood they didn't really have a lot of options. And so they went power run, and it worked well enough. And I think, if you were able to really load the box early and really just try and shut down early, they wouldn't have kept doing it as long. But once they got it rolling, it was just kind of rolling downhill at that point. They felt comfortable doing it for pretty much the entire first half, at least, is just power run on you. And, you're picking up 4 or 5 yards of carry. Why would you not?
Yeah, they weren't, like I said, they weren't dominant. No. And Texas won more than their fair share. But, I'm with you. I agree. I think they found that this will keep us on schedule and at least somewhat ahead of the chains. As we get behind the chains, we're done. But we got to stay in manageable situations against Texas. And it was the best way to do it. And then they added a little bit of the quarterback run game. They took some shots downfield. And I would say they actually got behind Texas DBs a couple of times. Mm-hmm. They couldn't complete them, but they got behind Texas DBs. So I think that's just SEC athletes, guys. That's what happens. Yeah. Ask Ole Miss about it with Kentucky. It's if you are like Texas was distracted, if you lose focus, which Texas was not focused in that game for most of it. If you're your own worst enemy, self-inflicted wounds like turnovers and penalties, which Texas had a lot of in that game. I'm not saying you're going to lose games in the SEC, but they'll be more competitive than you expect. Just like Mississippi State was, and Mississippi State is considered a bottom dweller in the SEC. And you get more penalties because if your fundamentals are flawed and your technique is flawed against better athletes, you know what? You do hold. You grab. You know what I mean? If your technique is off as a DB, that guy gets behind you. Oh, not the other. And they're different than Michigan athletes. They are. They're twitchier. They're faster. They're stronger. That's what the SEC, they call it the mini NFL for a reason. So if the DBs, hey, if they're bad with their leverage and say their footwork is a little off, you saw Mississippi State guys got behind them a couple of times. I think that's the biggest difference to me that I noticed. The O lineman, bigger, a little bit stronger. So power run game against Texas, man, worked a little bit, running downhill on Texas, just a little bit, not a lot. I mean, they didn't have a tremendous amount of success, but enough to keep them in the game. And I think that's a good shock to have for the Texas, which by the way, Texas has as good of athletes or better than anybody else in the SEC, so they can play with everybody. But to understand that, oh man, I have to crystallize my focus. I have to still be fundamentally sound. I cannot go out there and kind of casually do what I was doing against ULM and UTSA and expect to still have the overwhelming talent advantage. Even against Michigan, Texas looked faster and bigger and stronger against Michigan. They did. And they looked that way against Mississippi State, but Mississippi State's got some athletes too. And I think this is probably one of the better collection of athletes Texas has played since, they started this season. And I think that was a little bit of a shock to the system for the Longhorns. And they'll learn that. That's basically the step up in competition for Texas. We talk about it all the time. Man, it's the SEC. What does it mean? That's what it means. It means now Kentucky's going to be a problem for everybody in the SEC. Everybody thought, oh man, Kentucky's terrible. They lost to South Carolina. No, they still got really good athletes, and they could be a problem. And if you're having an off game, you know what? 3/4 of competitive football with Mississippi State. I thought they were terrible. Yeah, but they got some athletes. And all it takes is for you not to be focused, because that run could have happened. You had to remember they score early on in the game with the touchdown, and then you have the blue fumble early on. That stopped one of your run. Then you had like penalties, and Texas really couldn't find their groove offensively because they at times were behind the chains. And then Mississippi State kept the football actually to start the game for 7-8 minutes of that first quarter. So you just add up and you realize, and then you look up and it's halftime and it's a competitive game. And if not for that touchdown for DeAndre Moore right before halftime, I mean, hell, Mississippi State's going into halftime thinking, all right, now we really got a chance. That I think killed a lot of their momentum and their hope. Yeah, because they were like, "Oh man, damn it! I've been trying to stop that all game." They did it that quick. Yeah, and they can do that.
You could tell Levy was like, if we can get into halftime, and it's somewhat, then I gotta walk in there and be like, "Look, we did that," and it's like, and then I'll have to start throwing the football or do something different in the second half. But all I gotta do is just keep it close for the first, so I can actually sell something to this team at halftime.
Yep, and he was damn near there, if not for DeAndre Moore and Alex Manning. And by the way, that was a third down, if I'm not mistaken. That was like a 3rd and 9. Like they had Texas kind of right where they wanted. It was
Yeah.
a 3rd and long, and Texas cashed in because of a great Manning throw. By the way, I think one of the X-Man abilities, you know what? I'll get into that later. I think I figured out what the X-Man qualities are for Arch Manning, at least a couple of them, things that he does as well, if not better than everybody else. We'll get to that. All right, let's get to some Sark sound on the other side, and we'll hear from Steve Sarkisian talking about the Longhorns' performance versus Mississippi State right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Let's hear from the head coach, Steve Sarkisian, about the Longhorns' performance versus Mississippi State. Here he is in the postgame talking about Arch Manning and how he wanted to get Arch in a rhythm, which is true. I mean, they came out, they threw the football. Remember, I told you guys the identity of this team has got to be pass first. I thought that if he didn't trust his young quarterback enough, he'd have more balance. At least he did in the ULM game. In this game, I want to say the early down pass rate was hovering around upwards of 70%. They threw the ball a lot early on. Here's Sark talking about getting Arch in a rhythm.
Again, to your point with Arch, I did want to make sure that we were getting him completions, to where I just didn't want him to feel like a home run hitter every time he got in the box. I think playing quarterback, you're shooting for the triple crown. We want to hit with a great average. We want to be able to hit home runs, and we want to be able to drive in runs. And so I felt like last week we were kind of a home run hitter and we were hitting 250, and I wanted to get that average up. And so I thought he did that today. I think he was, like I said, I think he was 26 of 31. That's very efficient. But like I told him, I coached him hard today in game, and because we're always going to continue to push these guys to try to be the best. And I thought there were some things in today's game that Arch did really, really well. I mean, there were some nice plays made by him, especially on some third down conversions. And then there was a couple other ones I thought he could have operated the plays even better. And so that's our job to push him to go do that. But I was proud of him. Thought he really responded coming off of last week's game. And what a luxury, to have a player of his caliber as our backup quarterback. And so we've got two great players. Like I said, we got to get, hopefully we're able to get through this without having to put Quinn out there. And now he's got 2 more weeks to get himself healthy for, like I said, the really kind of the second half of the season.
All right. That's Sark talking about the getting Arch in a rhythm. And like I said, I think he prioritized that. Remember, he was actually very critical of himself after the ULM game and saying he doesn't think they really got him in a rhythm. It was obvious that was intentional and deliberate. Hey, we want him confident. We want him in a rhythm early. And they were rhythm throws. I want to say out of the first 10 plays, 7 of them were either play action pass, RPOs, or screens. But those cheat codes and those force multipliers that allow quarterbacks to really get comfortable and get in the groove. And I think that was definitely on purpose. I mean, that was and the high pass rate. So he trusts his young quarterback. Remember, I said the pre-snap motion rate, in the last start for Arch was relatively low because I don't think Sark trusted him. It was below Sark's average. I don't think Sark trusted him with all those moving parts, navigating everything pre-snap. It opens you up to a lot of pre-snap penalties. That's a lot of a burden on a young quarterback, if you will. That's a lot for them to process. And along with the pre-snap, you want to take some of that off of their plate and their responsibility. And I think Sark did that in the ULM game. Boy, in this game, you saw close to the Sark average. Right below 55% in pre-snap motion rate. That means he trusts his young quarterback to be able pre-snap, to be able to, delegate all of those moving pieces and also be able to navigate all of that before the snap. So he empowered Arch. He empowered him with the pass rate early on. He empowered him with trying to get him in a rhythm. That was a priority. And I think he empowered him as well with the pre-snap motion rate, one of the cheat codes and hacks that you use offensively, and one of the most effective in football today. And I don't think Sark wanted to lose that element in his offense just because he had an inexperienced quarterback there. All right. But the big game was actually by DeAndre Moore. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. My prediction was you're going to have a different leading receiver in at least half the games this year. Well, we're already close to the midway point in the season. How many different receivers have we had? Different leading receivers. We've had Wingo, we've had Bond, we've had Helm, and now DeAndre Moore had his first 100-yard game of his career. So you've had 4 different leading receivers, all right, in the first 5 games of the season. I think my prediction is I don't know who else. Golden's probably going to end up doing it at one point. Hell, I wouldn't doubt if you get a guy like Silas Bowden has a breakout game at one point. But we got to get into SEC play, so maybe not as likely.
I mean, Cook could get open. Cook got open on some big ones. So if Cook could catch 2 or 3 in a game. If he gets 2 or 3 big ones in a game, then he could get 120 on just 3 catches. That
was such a disappointing drop. He's such a good player too. But you're right. I can't forget about Jonte Cook. So I think you'll get two more other guys potentially, or at least one more other guy that's going to lead you in receiving, and that'll be, like I said, close to half the games. But let's talk about DeAndre Moore for a second. Big game. We know that he has been basically a mentee, if you will, for Jordan Whittington. He's very, very complimentary about Jordan Whittington. Talks about how that was the guy that really showed him the way in that receiver room, and he's modeled his game after Jordan Whittington. We had a big game. Jordan Whittington never had a game this big at Texas, over 100 yards receiving on 4 catches. Here is Sark talking about DeAndre Moore's big game.
The ball really found him tonight. He really didn't practice much this week. He was you had the hit pointer last week, and Thursday's practice, I made him practice. I said, if you're going to play Saturday, I need you to practice Saturday. And this was Thursday's practice, and he was pretty gimpy. And I really thought to myself, man, he's not really going to be able to go, but we'll see. And he came back to Friday's walkthrough and looked pretty good, and we ran him pretty good and felt pretty good. And then I just watched him long and hard in pregame. I thought, man, he's running great. Let's let him go. And as much as for DeAndre, we see 4 catches for 103 yards, but it's all of the little things that he does that I really appreciate. He gets guys lined up. The long run that Trey pops there in the fourth quarter. I mean, he blocks his tail off for that guy. So he's giving us so many other things that are just above and beyond. I love it that he's getting rewarded with these catches in these explosive plays. But like I said, I'm proud of that guy because he does things the right way every single day. And I give Jordan Whittington a lot of credit because DeAndre modeled himself after Jordan Whittington. And when Jordan left, DeAndre assumed that role, and it's paying off for him.
Yeah, you think about I think he had 4 targets actually in the game, if I'm not mistaken. One of course, that 49-yard touchdown. That was out of empty formation. I think he ends up as the number 2 receiver, runs a slot fade there. I believe he's a primary on that play. And the first touchdown was a stalk. Well, that wasn't a touchdown. Actually, it was an explosive play. Almost ended up being a touchdown. That stalk, block, and go, where it's just Ryan Wingo scored on it versus ULM. They fake the screen, and then he goes upfield. He's wide open because the DB, essentially, they collapse on the screen, and Arch does a great job of selling it too. And then he had 2 targets to motion. The touchdown. The other touchdown that he had where he motions to a triangle trips formation, that was target to motion, and his other reception was a target to motion. It seemed like there was a deliberate effort to get him the football. Interesting that he didn't practice all week either. All right, one more of the cut here, because I've talked about how Texas, they got to be a pass-first team. Been saying it since the C.J. Baxter injury, got to pass to open up the run. It feels like Sark now is accepting that, even when the Arch is playing. It seems like they were a pass-first team. Here's Sark responding to a question about passing to set up the run.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think we're very efficient in the pass game right now, and we've got really good depth at that spot, and it's a multitude of guys that are making plays for us, whether it's IB or Matt, DeAndre Moore with another good game. We've talked about Wingo and Jonte. I was proud of him coming back after he drops the kind of touchdown, comes back with a big play there in the third quarter. And we're trying to find ways to get Silas in there. So we're really solid 6 deep. And so when you can do that, and then the quarterbacks have a firm understanding of what we're doing to go along with the tight ends, that can set some things up for the run game. But again, I learned a long time ago. I've studied Bill Walsh, at length. And if you really watch those 49er teams with Joe Montana, there was a lot of throw early, run late kind of mentality. And we weren't able to do that kind of early in our time here, just because of the strength of our team. And we had some pretty good runners that were high level players. And so it was kind of run, and throw it when you had to. But we've kind of evolved ourselves into a team that has got great balance. And anytime you throw for 300, rush for 200, that's like ideal for us. I mean, if I can look down on a box score, it's 300, 200, I feel really good about what we're doing.
He wants to open with the pass and close with the run. I swear we've talked about this on this show multiple times. That's his MO. Open with the pass. That's what the speed is all about in the Sark blueprint. Have you chase them all around the field for 3 quarters, and then once they get a lead off the Sark run that we always talk about, then you close the game out by pounding the rock, choke the life out of them with the run game. That's what the big humans is all about. The big humans are to close the game. The fast humans are to open the game. And then the run in between there, that's what gets you the lead that allows you to just kind of pound him into submission. That's Sark's MO. That's his blueprint. That's how he wants to win. They actually did win that way against Mississippi State. Just didn't look pretty. All right, we come back. We'll get into the topic for the big fat poll of the day, and also we'll get into your musically themed day of the week. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers here. Let me tell you about Dr. Record and his wonderful team. I owe them a huge debt of gratitude. I initially went there for just a cleaning, a checkup, and the checkup was so thorough indeed that they found that my wisdom teeth were growing in sideways. I was on the verge of a disastrous situation, but no need to worry because my friends over at Dr. Record's office, Dr. Record, indeed, they actually made sure that I was well taken care of. I was in great hands. They made sure I was educated and informed and comfortable with the process, got the procedure scheduled, got everything done. I was back at work within a couple of days, and my dental health and dental hygiene have never been better, thanks to Dr. Eckert and his wonderful team. So anytime someone asks me if I know a good dentist, I say, no, I know a great dentist. I know the best dentist in Austin, Dr. Eckert, and you should know him too. Trust me, folks, no matter what it is, hopefully it's not as serious as having all your wisdom teeth extracted like I had to do. But if it's just something simple, like a routine cleaning or a checkup or any general dentistry, teeth whitening, dentures, porcelain crowns, veneers, dental implants, full mouth reconstruction, even root canal therapy, whatever it takes to make sure you're getting the best quality dental care available. That's what Dr. Eckert and his team are all about. And right now, he has the ability to give you a brand new smile in just one day, permanently secure it to your dental implants. No time spent without teeth. You'll get temporary fixtures until they can complete your permanent smile, and you'll smile again with confidence and eat freely without pain or discomfort. It's a lifelike permanent solution. So if you've been told that your teeth need to be replaced, just call Dr. Eckert today to learn about this revolutionary alternative to dentures. Trust me, folks, a complimentary consultation, so you got nothing to lose but so much to gain, because a confident smile can truly change your life. So give them a call, 512-345-3166. And right now, all Horn listeners will get free Zoom whitening with any treatment that you get over at Dr. Eckert's office. So they're hooking you up. So go check them out, 512-345-3166, or visit dreckert.com, DRUECKERT.com.
Back on the Rodcast on a Monday, and that means it's a Smooth Soul Monday, easing you back into the work week with some smooth soul, keeping it calm here, and maybe leaving a little bit of some people, maybe a little too on edge about a 22-point win. I get it. I can tell you the people I watched it with thought maybe I overreacted at some points in that game. Once it was over, I could reflect on it a little bit, but during the game, there was plenty of times to be very upset at the team, but you get over it, and then you go like, okay, still a 22-point win in the SEC debut. It's not the end of the world.
To the fourth quarter. That's why people were, because they.
Oh no, I get it.
I stew in it. That's
yes, I get it, but yes, it was also, I guess so. Maybe a little smooth soul to easy back into it. And you go, okay, we're good. We're still undefeated, still looking good there. So we'll ease you in on a work week. Let's get to Big Fat Poll today. Text line's open. 512-447-3776 is the text line, and we'll get this posted up on X at the Horn ATX.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the day on the Horn.
All right, you know what we do on a Monday. Who was the MVP for Texas against Mississippi State? We've got a few different choices for you here. Arch Manning course, he goes 26 for 31, 324 yards, 3 total touchdowns in the game. DeAndre Moore, 103 yards, 2 touchdowns on 4 catches. Colin Simmons, 7 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss for Colin Simmons. And then I'll throw in Anthony Hill, 6 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a sack as well. Who is your MVP for Texas against Mississippi State?
They did get 6 sacks. We haven't talked about the defense enough, but I said they'd get at least 3. I mean 6. So now on the season, what you at? You're at 13 on the season. So
and I mean 6 sacks on not that many dropbacks.
No. And they came like I want to say like toward the end second half. Like most of them came. I think you had like maybe one.
I mean, how many passes did they even throw in the first half?
They didn't throw many. I want to say you did get maybe at the matter of fact, it came at the end of that one. Remember, Anthony Hill one came early in the game, and then the rest of them basically came at the end of the first half, and then the rest of the game. Because I want to say Baron Sorrell, maybe he got one at the end of the first half there, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, they got. I mean, they got to the passer a ton in this game, so they got 13 on the season. So now we can stop being so critical of the pass rush, and them not getting enough sacks. But player of the game. You said defensive player of the game, or you just want player of the game?
Just player of the game. Period. So we say Arch and DeAndre are in there.
I know it's gonna get Arch again, but man, DeAndre Moore should get some love. That's a great game he had. He really did have a good game. I mean, big plays at critical moments. Think about when you needed them.
Yeah,
you needed those plays, right? You needed that one at the end of the half, that 49-yard touchdown. That was big. Hell, the other touchdown also was big for you. I just think his plays were so timely for Texas. But Arch is going to get it. I mean, he was the highest graded player by Pro Football Focus. Highest graded quarterback by Pro Football Focus in the country. He might be the highest graded player. I haven't looked at all.
He might have. He might be. I will say, I think there was a quarterback who had a better week, but that was just because the moment that he had to show out. I think Milroe had a better week than Arch, but that's because he was playing Georgia.
Yeah, he's playing Georgia.
So I know he had a pick in the game, but I'll say he was playing Georgia, so it makes it a bigger game. Arch would have had to have like 600 yards to be able to be like, oh no, you beat Georgia. It helps.
Yeah,
it helps have the big moment in those games.
It does have to have the big moments in those games, but hey man, you can only play who you play and beat who you beat.
Exactly.
Arch Manning, I don't know if he could have been better.
No, I don't think he could have been much better in that game. He played really, really well. And then, I agree with him. I think he had a touchdown that first one. I will say, I think there was a little bit of welcome to the SEC reffing because they just called it a really tight game for both sides. I'm not saying for Texas it was one-sided. They just called a lot of fouls. They just called a lot of things.
They did.
And it was just you're like, all right, let them play a little bit more. Let them play a little bit more.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I haven't looked at them close enough to see how many I really disagree with. But Texas was sloppy.
They were sloppy.
They were sloppy. And I think, once you establish yourself as a sloppy team, then it does start to roll downhill. Refs don't give you the benefit of the doubt anymore. I should say that once you get it. So I think that also happened, but you're right. Could have been some welcome to the SEC officiating. I'm not disagreeing with that at all.
And by the way, when I said not one-sided, just we're going to call the game really tight because we're going to go out and we're going to make a point to make it really tight reffing today. And you just go, that's cool, but this makes it so much harder to watch football if you're going to keep calling everything.
That is true. And I think it's a part of it was kind of just better athletes Texas was playing up against. So Texas may have been a little sloppy in some of their technique and fundamentals.
Oh, no, there's definitely, because it's not all of them. But there were some spots in there. That whole goal line stand where Arch got in the end zone twice and they said no on both of them was kind of annoying. That when you're watching that, you're like, we get it, man. What does he need to do? What does he need to do to get over the end zone? He's got it twice now.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I thought they probably should just gave him the touchdown initially from the long run, even though it was kind of a bang play. And I understand why they decided it wasn't a touchdown, but man, that kind of effort, I'd have given it to him. That'd have been. But essentially, Arch had 2 touchdowns taken off the board too.
Yeah,
the Jonte Cook catch, and then that one. Think about that. That'd have given him 5 touchdowns.
Well, no, because that one he eventually got back because he eventually did rush that one in.
He did rush that one in. I guess so. You're right. Yeah. But it would have been the highlight, I guess.
He would have had the highlight play, but he did get the touchdown on that one.
And he did have the 70 basic yards that were taken off the board. Yeah. All right. I think Arch is going to win it again, but I guess by how much? We'll talk about that coming up. But thank you, Patrick, for the topic for the big fat poll of the day. All right, we'll come back. We'll get into some NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We'll talk about the Texans and their win, the clutch gene shown by C.J. Stroud, giving them a win over the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are now over on the season. We'll get into that and also talk about some of the other NFL topics. We'll talk about Xavier Worthy having a big game, clutch performance, speaking of, versus the Chargers for the Kansas City Chiefs. Jordan Whittington also showing out on NFL Sunday. All of that and more when we return right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a Monday, a fun day edition of the Rodcast, and also it is a smooth soul Monday edition of the Rodcast. That's when Patrick plays jams intended to soothe the tortured soul of sports fans whose team may have had a tough weekend, and also for you out there who had a very enjoyable weekend. We hope everybody did. Very stress-free, celebratory weekend. Hopefully your teams did well, and then usually the transition from the stress-free, fun-filled weekend into the hectic work week with a lot of meetings and traffic. That can be a bit traumatic. So my man Patrick, in order to make that a smooth transition for you, that's the purpose of Smooth So Mondays, to try to ease you into the work week. So we appreciate Patrick hooking us up there. We also appreciate Patrick hooking us up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day, which is already posted, I'm sure, over at Horn, or it will be posted at Horn ATX, at the Horn ATX on X. Patrick, what is the topic for the big fat poll today?
Who was the MVP for Texas against Mississippi State?
Oh yeah, actually got some diversity here already. Nice. Okay, some people got Colin Simmons on here.
There you go.
And DeAndre Moore's getting some love too. There you go. So it's not all Arch. Arch is getting, I think, most of it already early. But there you go. Colin Simmons is. I use a prodigy term with Arch. Colin Simmons is the same way. I mean, if they play Colin Simmons more, he's gonna make more plays. I'm not even sure. I don't think he has a start yet this season under his belt, but he's already your leader in sack. Matter of fact, he's got 4 sacks in 5 games. There are only 11 players in college football with more sacks than him right now.
Jeez.
He's a freshman. I bet if I look at those other guys that are ahead of him, I bet they all have starts, at least one start in the first 5 games. 4 sacks in the first 5 games. He's got 6 tackles for loss. I remember the last year their sack leader was Ethan Burke with 5.5. He's gonna surpass that in the next 2 games probably. And honestly, oh man, we got to play this. Speaking of Colin Simmons, he's already talking a little trash too. Apparently, I don't know why, and apparently he's just feeling himself. Do we have this, Patrick? Can we play this, Colin Simmons? It's from my man CJ Vogel over at on Texas Football at CJ Vogel _OTF. He was talking to Colin Simmons about the Texas Oklahoma game coming up after the bye week, of course. And I guess he was feeling real good after them 2 sacks because he basically kind of called his shot against Oklahoma. So here is Colin Simmons on playing Oklahoma after the bye week.
You had a little time before the game, but OU is next on the schedule. Your first Red River. What do you think about that?
OU. I mean, they got a good squad this year. A lot of people on that team that I know. I feel like we're gonna dominate them, But at the end of the day, we gotta trust in our coaching and just get better each and every day.
I feel like we're gonna dominate them. Exactly. See, I don't mind it. Listen, I don't mind it at all. I think Texas is that good to trash talk and still go into the game and win. But you did just add a little incentive and you add motivation to your opponent. Yeah, and you know what? You're good enough where it shouldn't matter. You still should be able to go out there and win. But I'm sure probably Sark didn't appreciate it. I'm sure some of the other guys on the team didn't appreciate it. So yeah, first bulletin board material 2 weeks out you got for the other side of Oklahoma because Colin Simmons said, I feel like we're going to dominate them. And the truth is they could, because Oklahoma's going through a hell of a transition right now. They won, by the way, that was a hell of a win for them over Auburn because they were down their top 5 starting wide receivers. They had just gone through a quarterback change and they won it with their defense. Now think about it, their defense is legit. Especially their back 7. I mean, they got one of the best defenses in the country, and Brent Venables is a defensive mind. But offensively, they are struggling. They're basically in the middle of an offensive identity crisis offensively. So that's why Texas could end up, blowing that game wide open. We've seen it on both sides. I've been on the downside of one of those blowouts in the Texas OU game. So it can happen, and we know there's always been a lot of trash talk back and forth. So is Texas going to dominate Oklahoma? They could. If Oklahoma can't score, and Texas can Texas score against that defense consistently? That'll be the question because that defense is legit. It's a good defense.
Yeah. No, what I mean,
I'll tell you what Oklahoma's going to do. They're probably going to take this Jeff Levy game plan and say, all right, let's do that because we got a quarterback that can move. All right, we got some big boys on the O-line. Can we just run some power gap schemes against Texas, control and maintain the football, basically shrink this game a little bit and limit possession for Sark so we don't get blown out and allow him to monopolize the momentum. And they do that, they can stand at 4.5, 3/4, and then you won't technically dominate them if they're in the game for that long. But You got to limit the Sark run, and that's what Jeff Lebby did really well. The Sark run didn't come to the fourth quarter, and then they scored like 3 touchdowns in like a 8-minute span.
Yeah,
and then that's your game blown wide open. But that game with no Sark run, that's how you keep it close. Washington was able to do it that way. You limit the run, and maybe you can do it by forcing turnovers because Oklahoma's really good there. Jeff Lebby did it by basically keeping the ball as long as he could and slowing and shrinking the game down. Yeah. So I think Oklahoma can copy that. And if they have wide receivers there, they'll have better athletes to do it with. So, but Colin Simmons, he's a prodigy, man. He's probably going to get you double-digit sacks, I think, this year. That's my prediction for Colin Simmons.
Yeah, because I think he's going to get more and more playing time as the season goes. Because how do you keep him on the bench when he's playing like this?
I mean, at one point, I think he might break through as a starter for you. I mean, it depends on how many plays he's making. I mean, Barron Sorrell is your best all-around edge rusher right now. There's no question. He's your best edge rusher against the run. He can play multiple shades, and I think he's gotten better as a pass rusher. But your best natural pass rusher on the team is Colin Simmons. And what do I always say? It's a natural. It's programmed early, or it's such a natural and God-given. It's really hard to just become an elite pass rusher by cultivating a craft. It's most of that's natural. The BGO is natural. The speed rush from is natural. The bend, the explosivity, like all that's those are natural. That's why last year your best pass rusher, one of them was Anthony Hill, coming off the edge. I think he said Byron Murphy. I think Sark said was his best pass rusher last year. I remember also Ethan Burke, a young Ethan Burke led you in sacks. I think it's something you can do when you're younger, because I think what Anthony Hill's going to learn is how to hold up against the run, how to squeeze the edge and not allow too many running lanes or too many, scrambling lanes for quarterbacks. That may be one thing he's got to work on. But man, in terms of pass rushing, I talked to Brian Robertson about it, and Brian Robertson said, that he thinks that he anticipates the snap count, that he's found a tail, basically, like he's watching film and he's found a tail on the O-line, whether that's a guard or a tackle or watching the center or whatever, that he's anticipating the snap count. Not just good in terms of his BGO and ball get off, but Brian Robertson said that he finds a way to, basically, I don't know, find a tail or find some indicator on the O-line. And that's what he's keying on. Because he said basically his BGO is too good, that it can't just be him naturally getting off the ball that well. He said, because he's getting off the ball sometimes before the tackles are leaving out of their stance. And he's like, that's got to be seeing something else. I don't know. I mean, he's a D lineman, so he would know better than me. I mean,
exactly. Yeah,
playing in the NFL, and I don't know if that's the case. So he's saying that that's how good he looks. And I'm like, if that's the case, then he's a higher level. He's more of a cerebral player than we're giving him credit for. If that's what he's doing as a freshman. So I think he's a double-digit sack guy. I think he gets you 10 sacks this year, maybe 10 and a half. Remember, you got an extended season too. You'll have SEC title game, and you'll have the obviously the college football playoff. So that makes it a little bit easier. I think he gets you double-digit sacks in 13 games, because the more he plays, the more plays he makes. And like I said, he's a prodigy, guys. There's no doubt about it. He's one of them dudes. And I don't know how often. This is the research I got to do. How often has a true freshman got double-digit sacks at Texas? First of all, it ain't that many guys with double-digit sacks seasons.
Yeah. And
Period.
There's not a ton of true freshmen that play in good teams.
No. So at Texas, how many players who've gotten double-digit sacks have also been freshmen at the time? I don't know if that's ever happened. I got to go back and check. I'm sure there's been some freaks maybe we got to go look at some of those guys back in the day, but that's rare. Then you got to think there were, teams just started getting to a pass happy, era of football.
That's true.
So it can't be that far back because they weren't playing, you got to have at least kind of double-digit games to do it. So I wouldn't have to go that far back. I think I'd have to go back to like maybe the 60s. And I wouldn't have to go into like the 50s and the 40s, I don't think. So I'll do the research, but I don't know if it's ever happened at Texas. He's got a real shot to do it. So that's the player up for the player of the game, the topic for the big fat poll today. And I'll throw out there that DeAndre Moore, man, I'll give DeAndre Moore some credit. I didn't realize Sark said he was hurt all week long and practiced for the first time on Thursday and then has the game of his life, the best game he's ever had, coming off of a week where he didn't practice much. And it felt like it was deliberate that they were giving him the football. Like I said, he had 2 targets to motion. One of them was the touchdown. He was on that 49-yard touchdown. He was the number 2 receiver. Remember, they blitzed. So Arch basically is responsible for the free rusher on that play. Remember, he gets decked on that play. He gets hit. And he knows he's going to get hit. And I think he knows that his primary was DeAndre Moore on that play. Gunnar Helm runs a hitch route on the outside, so kind of a smash concept. And I believe there's a number 3 receiver up there to this side too. And a number 3 receiver runs a bit of an over route or an under route, crossing route to the actually, no, that's Matthew Golden. I believe, actually, no, he runs kind of a seam route. He wants to try to split this. He tries to run like a seam route, I believe, on that play. And then you have DeAndre Moore running the straight slot fade. And Gunnar Helm opens up a lot of room on the outside to throw the ball over that shoulder, the outside shoulder, because that DB was playing inside leverage. And there was no over-the-top safety for him, and he dropped it right in the bucket. And that seemed like he was the primary on that read as well. And then, of course, there's the stalk, block, and go, where he doesn't score, but he gets a 20-yard reception or 21-yard reception or whatever it was. And he's the primary on that one because it's just the same play that Ryan Wingo scored on versus ULM. So he's acting like he's going to block for the screen, and then he sells it, and so does Arch. And then, boom, once the DB reacts, Arch throws it right over the top, and it's an explosive play. So I felt like he was the primary, or like I feel like he was being schemed open at times to me. And I wonder if that was intentional because Sark just said the ball found him naturally. And maybe he was just lucky. The ball found him naturally. I felt like there was a little something extra scheme-wise to try to get him the football. Just the way I felt. Just me. Don't miss my intuition, if you will, watching the film. All right, good stuff there from Patrick on the topic for the big fat poll today. We could talk Texas football all day, but I want to get into some NFL discussion, talk about the Texans and their win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll also get into some of the other NFL news, notes, and nuggets from our league. Xavier Worthy, big reason that Kansas City was able to pull off the win against the Chargers. Lost their number 1 wide receiver, Rashee Rice. Looks like Xavier Worthy is going to have to step up and be the number 1 guy for them. Dropped his huggies, as Bill Parcells would say back in the day. But first, before we get into NFL news, notes, and nuggets, talk some Texans, let's get educated, let's get informed, let's get updated on all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn Headlines.
All right, your Horn Headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the MLB, the Astros finished their regular season winning both games against the Guardians before the game Sunday was canceled due to a long rain delay. The Astros are now set to take on the Tigers and former manager A.J. Hinch in the AL wildcard round starting Tuesday. The Rangers wrapped up their season by sweeping the Angels with several young players coming through in the final games. The Rangers finished with a 78-84 record on the season, and Nathan Eovaldi was able to pick up his 12th win of the season in the final game. In the NFL, the Texans came back to score a touchdown with 18 seconds left to beat the Jaguars and improved to 3-1 on the season. The Vikings and Chiefs remained undefeated after wins on Sunday. However, the Chiefs fear that Rashee Rice may be lost for the season. Tonight, the Titans look for their first win against the Dolphins, and the Seahawks try to stay unbeaten against the Lions. And in college football, Texas got a win over Mississippi State 35-13 with Arch Manning throwing for 324 yards and 2 touchdowns. However, they dropped to number 2 in the rankings after Alabama topped Georgia 41-34. Texas now gets a bye week to rest some players before the Red River rivalry the following Saturday. And that is your Horn Headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn Headlines. I appreciate those. We'll get to some NFL stories from our league a little bit later on, but let's talk about the Texans and their win over the Jaguars. I told you that at first it looked like the Texans were in full control of this game and like it wasn't going to be close. That's the way they started anyway. They started with a 9-play opening drive that the Texans scored a touchdown on. Then they scored on 3 of their first 4 first half possessions. And it's like, oh man, Texans are gonna once again, they dominate the Jags. They own the Jags. They're gonna beat the Jags. And in the second half, the Texans, their penalties, I believe they had 12 penalties in the game. The penalties started to become a big problem for them, and that put them behind the chains. That actually put them behind schedule on a lot of drives, and that's when they had the 3 and out. So they opened with back-to-back 3 and outs. Remember the third and longs because of the penalties? There were a lot of third. They still win a lot of third and longs. They were, I want to say they had 13 third downs. You had 10 of the 13 third downs were third and longs, third and 7+ yards again. Now they were still 7 of 13, so they were 53%. They're usually around 37% on third downs. So they, even with the third and longs, CJ Stroud was elite. And just the way that how composed he was and the way he handled the offense. But they looked clunky in the second half, and mostly because of the penalties and because they were so behind the chains. And they opened with back-to-back 3 and outs. They had 5 consecutive punts in the second half, and that left the door open, pretty much for the Jags. And the Jags they took control of the game. I won't say control, but they had the lead late in the game. But it was the second, fourth quarter comeback for CJ Stroud, and he got a chance to show off his clutch gene. He had one final shot. They were down 3 in this game with that final drive of 2.5 minutes. Took 69 yards in 9 plays. I believe CJ Stroud was 5 of 5 on that final drive, and was able to go down and get the game-winning touchdown for the Texans. I think it was Ogunbowale touchdown reception. And it pretty much, between CJ Stroud and Nico Collins, CJ Stroud was great because he ended up over 300 yards passing, 345 yards, 2 touchdowns. But most of that was to Nico Collins, 151 yards. He had 12 receptions, 15 targets, 1 touchdown. He did have 63 yak yards. What's most impressive, I should say, about Nico Collins, 12 receptions. 10 of those came on targets of 10+ yards down the field. So it is not dink and dunk. The NFL is dink and dunk, but Nico Collins is a downfield vertical monster. He had 10 such targets of 10+ yards downfield, caught all of them down the field. And what I love, my favorite stat from the game is that CJ Stroud, who we've talked about, has said that he wants to become a more capable scrambler as a quarterback. And I think his version of scrambling is, scramble to throw. He wants to extend plays so that he can throw the football downfield when he has to abandon the pocket, when the pass protection isn't there. And Nico Collins and CJ Stroud connected on 102 yards on just a scramble drill alone. So Nico Collins had 151 yards. 102 of those were on the scramble drill. And that was really encouraging because that shows CJ Stroud, not only him stating in the offseason, no, I'm going to work on my scrambling ability, my ability to throw on the run, to extend plays, and him actually executing it on the field. And that was a big part of why you run that game, was CJ Stroud's ability to extend the play, get outside the pocket, and still find Nico Collins. So 2 things there. Number one, CJ, because I won't say the first play of that game-winning drive was a scramble, 11-yard scramble. To get the first down. So he's doing it in crucial moments, but also finding a way that when the play breaks down, his improvisational skill now is also, I don't think we saw as much of that. We saw it some in his rookie year, but I think you're going to see more of it this year because he's got better receivers who will be better with the scramble drill, and he's got a connection with Nico that might be special. He looks for Nico on third downs. Anybody who's a Texas fan, you watch him, he's on third down, they looking for Nico. Like I don't even know who primaries and progressions is. Like, nah, where's Nico? I'm finding Nico. And now on scramble drills, when he's obviously under duress and he's moving around improvising, he's looking for Nico. So I think that's what it tells me. And I love that aspect. And I won't see Stroud to protect himself. And I think he's smart enough to do that. But man, you add that to, because I think they got some pass protection issues at times. And if he can be able to extend those plays when the play breaks down or when the pass protection breaks down, and then still be able to get, make plays downfield and get the football vertical, which he does with Nico Collins, dangerous combination. So Oh, by the way, Nico leading the NFL in receiving yards. He's on pace for over 2,000 receiving yards on the season.
Yeah, and they missed him on a touchdown at the end of the first half. They missed him on one where CJ just put too much on it, tried to get over the middle linebacker, but sailed it. And that was another one. Nico wide open in the back of the end zone.
Yeah, they can't cover him right now. Now Jacksonville can't cover anybody. So
I get, but he's doing that. He's doing this all season long.
Yes, exactly.
He's getting space. He's getting catching on the run. He's just been really, really good. And man, falling right into that. What an extension you signed him for before.
Amazing.
Because if you waited on that one at all.
Ooh, think about that. Think about if you were just waiting.
I mean, he's a $30 million wide receiver right now.
Yep. There's no doubt. Because he's our last year he's top 10 in like all your major categories. That's easily a top 10 receiver last year. Now you're talking about a guy that's in the conversation to be first team all pro.
Yeah. I mean, it's early in the season, but right now you say 4 weeks in, he's up there of all. Yeah, he's in the all pro conversation for what he's doing. And the fact this Texans team is winning.
Yes, that also helps. They're winning. They're 3-1. It ain't a pretty 3-1, but it don't matter. They're 3-1. But how about this? I got this is where Nico Collins, week 1 through 4 stretch where it would rank among all week 1 through 4 stretches for receivers in the past 10 years. So we're going 10-year sample size here, just weeks 1 through 4. This is where his current stats would rank in the last 10 seasons. He'd be 5th in receiving yards, tied for 4th in receiving first downs. Yak yards, he'd be 7th right now in the last 10 years. He's having, like I said, he's on pace for over 2,000 yards receiving. I don't know. I don't think he's going to get 2,000 yards. But that's a hell of a leap he's taking. He said his goal was 1,500. He's going to get 1,500. Man, he's going to shatter 1,500.
Is it weird watching CJ Stroud where you're, as a Houston football fan, you just kind of feel like you're normally on the other side of those? Like throughout history,
fourth quarter comebacks,
you feel like he's a Houston football fan. You're like, no, normally we're the one getting those, not that they're happening against us. Not that we're the team to march back down the field. But yeah, it was, as bad as they played in the second, you had the beginning of the game as well. They muffed the punt, and Steven Sims muffs it, and it gets picked up at the 1 yard line, and you get a stop, and then immediately give them 7 points.
Yep.
So that was kind of bad and put you behind the 8 ball to start, and they had to work their way back into it. They again get so many 12 penalties in the game. They miss some where they're missing guys behind them still. They're like there was all this still the undisciplined action of everything, but you have a guy right now in CJ Stroud and with Nico where you feel give us the ball back with a little bit of time on the clock. And I believe they can get it down the field and score the touchdown when they need to, which is nice to have. But, man, it'd be nice to not have to worry about that like on a team like Jacksonville, where if you just make a few less mistakes in the game, you win by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. They're just not ready for it yet. They're not ready for championship, like a championship run just yet. That's fine. I mean, they're young. Yeah. Stroud's second year. D'Amico Ryan is still learning too. So, yeah, they're not going to beat. I was going to say can't beat Baltimore, Buffalo, and Kansas City right now. But hell, Kansas City is the only team I'm in the group that's still undefeated. And Baltimore, Baltimore just had a rocky start to the season. I think Baltimore is still going to be among that upper echelon in the AFC.
I mean, they look like it yesterday.
Exactly. I think they're rounding in the form now. They just had to play Kansas City early on. In Kansas City, losing Rashee Rice. Oh, man. I mean, last year they won the Super Bowl with one of the worst wide receiving cores in the league. I don't necessarily think that is going to derail the dynasty, in my opinion, them losing Rashee Rice. Because I think Xavier Worthy, he showed it yesterday. Would he have a 53-yard touchdown? That was their first touchdown getting on the board.
Yeah.
And then he had the 3rd down conversion. That was a 54-yard touchdown, excuse me. And it was beautiful. That was the longest air yards touchdown thrown by Mahomes in his career. He's never thrown a touchdown that long through the air, 62 yards in the air.
No, and then you keep hearing reports that Hollywood Brown is recovering really quickly, that he's kind of ahead of schedule. That that was one of those injuries that could have been like a 10-week injury if it doesn't heal right, but then if it it does, it's a little bit shorter, so he may come back sooner. And if you get him back, that now you add another wide receiver again, so you're not just relying everything on that. Travis Kelce, you think, is probably going to have to, he had a slow start to the season, but now he's going to be used more because.
And I wouldn't doubt if they trade for somebody. Kansas City, they don't care. They might make a move. It's Kansas City. Like I wouldn't doubt it. Now he may not. Brett Veach might decide, we're good. We can win it with Kelce, and we just drafted a receiver high. But the Kansas City, they're trying to get the 3-peat. So, and like I said, I know Rashee Rice is great. I still think they are the best team, and their record says it, in the AFC without their starting number one wide receiver.
Yeah,
because they'll just ask Travis Kelce to step up, and they'll start to empower Xavier Ward like they did in this game. And he only had 3 catches, I believe, right? And they were all like huge. One of them was to ice the game, basically on 3rd and 6. He caught the crossing route and iced the game for him. And then that was the 54-yarder that put them on the board. And that was, I want to say that, like I said, it was the longest career touchdown for Patrick Mahomes in terms of yards through the air. So I think they're still, if you're the Texans, you're still looking that they're still far and away the number one team you got to try to catch. And then there's Buffalo and there's Baltimore. And I don't think the Texans, even though their record would say different, I don't think they're close. I don't think they beat those 3 teams right now.
No.
In the AFC. You said the penalties, they're just sloppy. Yeah, just not buttoned up. I mean, Larry Tunsil, he went into that game with 9 penalties. And I think he had like more than that, but those were the ones that were accepted on him. So those are the ones that officially count. He had red gloves on in the game. Like red gloves on in the game. Because you know how easy it is to see if an offensive line is holding with red gloves. Red gloves. I mean, Jacksonville's uniforms are either, what is it, teal or whatever it is, or
they
white.
Red.
You got red gloves on? Like, how could that nobody say, hey, man, you lead the NFL in penalties on the offensive line and you're wearing red gloves? I don't know if it was a statement or what, but that's wild. That's crazy. How about this? He's got the most penalties by a player in the first 3 weeks, or at least he had the most penalties by a player in the first 3 weeks since 2000. And he's wearing scarlet letter gloves so that he can show the refs how egregious his holding is. I would have thought D'Amico Ryans, a player, would have been like, bro, no, man, you don't want to do that. Put some white gloves on. Put some, whatever. Pick whatever gloves are close to the uniform color they have. Pick those. And it'll make it tougher to determine whether you're holding and grabbing a guy. Red gloves, looks like you're holding on every damn play. Wow. I didn't even look to see how many penalties he had. I know they had 12 as a team, but yeah, let me tell you something. Come on, man. Gotta do better than that. All right. I want to talk a little bit about the rest of the NFL and some of the things we saw, some of the big surprises in the NFL. I don't know if we'll get to all of it today because I want to get to the Minnesota Vikings a little bit. I think the Washington Commanders have done some shocking things so far this season. But Jay Witt, we'll talk about this because we talked about Xavier Worthy a little bit. But Jay Witt, just really quickly before we go to Rod's rant, and then we'll kind of jump back to some Texas football conversation. My man Jay Witt he led the Rams this past week in route participation and targets because of all the injuries they have. He had 8 targets and 97% route participation. He had 6 receptions and 62 yards was his final stat line. Got to give it. I mean, so we talked about how he was going to be in the rotation, and now with the injuries to the wide receiver to Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, man, Jay Witt's the guy. One of the guys, not the guy, but he's one of the guys there. They're dependent on that passing game for the Rams. That's really encouraging. So you got some Longhorns showing out, and I don't know where AD Mitchell is. You can't even find him because Anthony Richardson can't find him. Like if I told you after the draft that basically Jay Witt would have a better start to his career than AD Mitchell in the NFL, you'd probably laughed at me. But that's the league is all about. Man, a lot of it is where you land and what system you land in, and what situation you land in. And Jay Witt's in a really good situation. He's got a veteran quarterback. He's got a genius offensive mind, and AD Mitchell doesn't have that. He doesn't have a quarterback that's consistent and that's accurate. He doesn't have a genius of an offensive coach there. it's just a different situation altogether. So that to me is one of the more surprising storylines for Longhorns in the NFL. But really excited for Xavier Worthy. Buy the Xavier Worthy stock. We've been saying it from the offseason on, but now with Rashee Rice out, they're going to have to start. Now you're going to start seeing him get some elements of a number one guy. Like they're going to start doing some things for him other than him being the player that takes the top off the defense, which he does pretty much 70% of the time with the Kansas City Chiefs now. Now he's going to get some run as with the role of Rashee Rice as a number one guy. So they'll start moving around a lot more now too. All right, we come back. We'll get into some NFL. I want to get to some Texas football conversation. We'll get back to the NFL. I promise you that. But I want to get to some Texas football conversation and talk about the X-Man abilities of one Arch Manning, and we'll talk about the defense a little bit too. I started to notice something that I really liked about what the defense was doing, some modifications. Remember I told you, Johnny Nansen throws out something new, something exotic, a creative look every week. It seems like something specific to that matchup, specific to your opponent. And I think we saw something again in the Mississippi State game. I'll point that out. We'll get into it. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to Rod's rant. A couple of things I want to get into here. First, Arch Manning, obviously coming off a spectacular performance, had over 300 yards passing, 235 to be exact, 26 of 31, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 3 big-time throws, according to Pro Football Focus, 0 turnovers, and they have him, excuse me, as the highest graded Pro Football Focus quarterback in week 5. But I always say with quarterbacks, I'm trying to identify the X-Man ability, what they do as well, if not better than everybody else. And I'm sure with more sample size, we'll be able to identify more of Arch's X-Men qualities. He's, got really high upside, so he's got more than a couple, but one is obvious, and I think he does have a preference to this actual X-Men quality. I think this elite quality is something that he actually prefers to do. So I don't know if it was chicken or the egg, right? If this was something that he worked on and cultivated because he really wanted it to be a part of his game, or if something he was just naturally good at as a young player and then has seen that it was a strength of his and continues to work on it. Not sure which one, but his deep ball is in my opinion, I think it's a kind of an NFL caliber deep ball. Like it's legit. And I think Sark recognizes that. I think he understands it too. I like I said, even before the first start he had versus ULM, I said he's going to bring the vertical game back in the offense. He likes to throw it deeper. He likes to get deeper into progressions. He wants to go downfield. Chicks dig the long ball, and so does Arch, right? Make a t-shirt out of that. All right. But he only had 4 in this game, but they were I think Sark dialed those up specifically. And he said in that last, and we'll play this later on the show, he said when he spoke to the media after the game that he did not want basically Arch to feel like he had to be a home run hitter basically every time he stepped in the box. That he wanted him to have different options so that he can get into a rhythm as a passer. And I think the deep shots they took really do reflect that mentality. I mean, think about it. He had 4 deep shots. One was a play action pass early on in the game to Matthew Golden. Simple, easy deep shot, right? It was just it was like a deep in route. But like I said, it reminded me of, remember last year, you used to see those deep curl routes from Quinn? And he'd be like 18, 20 yards down the field. Like, that's crazy. That's a deep route. It was kind of one of those. The other one was the schemed up stalk blocking goal for DeAndre Moore. The Jonte Cook one. Jonte Cook was a target to motion, by the way, that he dropped. He motioned to be the number 3 receiver on the wide side. To me, a lot of the times when Sark targets to motion, that was because he was a primary in the progression read. I think that sometimes that's him scheming guys open to scheme them to a certain matchup advantage. He's hunting and engineering matchups or mismatches for that advantageous to the offense. And then there was the DeAndre Moore touchdown, 49er touchdown, which was an empty set. And DeAndre Moore is the number 2 receiver. They run the slot fade. And I told you about him running the smash combination, the hitch route on the outside, opening up the throw over the outside shoulder, giving Arch plenty of space. And he put the ball in a beautiful spot. And I think, he might have been the primary there because there was a hot read. Quarterback was responsible for that free rusher. That was a DB blitz, I believe, and he gets nailed on that play, but he stayed in the pocket, knew, hey, if I make this throw, if I step up into it, it's going to hurt like hell. But man, DeAndre Moore's going to beat that guy because that guy's got inside leverage. There's no safety over the top. All he's got to do is stack him. And if he can stack him and give me that outside shoulder, that's going to be money. And it was. And that was third down, by the way. It was 3rd and 9. So I think Sark wanted to, in a very, calculated way, I think he wanted to scheme open some really nice deep shots because he knows, I think Arch prefers it. Remember, he talks about how he gets, different plays from quarterbacks, what plays they prefer and like within the game plan that week. And for Sark, for Arch and Sark, they're just getting to know each other. I'm sure they're compatible as play caller and quarterback. They're just getting to know each other's preferences and what each other, what they like and what they actually within the offense, what their strengths and weaknesses are. And I think for Arch, some of the plays that he likes, right? We know he likes the bootleg kind of rollout concept with a flood route, which floods are basically when you flood one area of the field, flood one zone of the field with all of your receivers, right? And he likes that concept with a boot waggle design rollout of some kind because in four of the last times we've seen him, we've seen that concept in some variety. We know that he likes to stalk, block, and go. His first start versus ULM, they ran a start block and go touchdown to Ryan Wingo. In this game, they ran to DeAndre Moore. Same concept. It was out of different formation, I believe it was, but same concept where Arch fakes the swing screen and then boom, that guy's wide open. If you sell it the right way, it's wide open, and it was. And I think those are just plays that just Arch prefers. Like, I like those concepts. Like, and I bet if we did the deep dive, we'd find more of those. But I think also he likes taking shots downfield. I didn't know that South was going to attack the ULM safeties. I just knew watching the small sample size that I had watched of Arch prefers to get deep into progressions. His time to throw, I think, was like 2.8 seconds. Quinn's time to throw is like 2.1, 2.2. The ball's out of his hands quick, fast. He's an RPO quarterback that can throw from a lot of different platforms, ball out of his hands quick. Hell, Arch prefers the old school play action pass. Let me turn my back to the defense actually sometimes. I'm a play action pass quarterback. And I think he's getting better at the RPO, but that's sleight of hand. That's why Sark prefers quick hands with his quarterbacks. But I digress. Getting back to it, I think Arch likes throwing the deep ball. And he's 50% completion percentage so far this season on deep balls. On passes 20 yards or more down the field, he has a 50% completion percentage. He's already probably a better deep ball passer now than even Quinn is right now. And he's inexperienced and just a freshman. And I think that's just naturally part of his game. That's one of his X-Man abilities. 50% completion percentage on deep balls, 20 yards per attempt. He's got 4 touchdowns, got 1 interception. The 1 interception was a terrible throw in that ULM game where three ULM players over there and 1 Longhorn, and he shouldn't have thrown it. And I still to this day, he probably would tell you, I don't know why I threw it. One of the worst throws I've thrown probably in my high school or college career so far. It was just a terrible decision. But other than that, I'm telling you, man, his deep ball and the accuracy of it is pretty stellar. I mean, it's on point. Think about the both deep balls to, well, I guess all 3 to DeAndre Moore. Those deep passes to him, they were all like perfectly placed. And the Jonte Cook one was perfectly placed, actually. That was a perfectly placed one too. And so, he didn't catch it, but man, like I said, the accuracy of them and he's comfortable with it. And I think he naturally, that's just part of his game. I think you'll see that come back to Sark's offense when Arch is the starting quarterback. And Quinn's gotten better at it, but not every quarterback is going to have that as a natural strength. Quinn's got his own natural strength. Quinn's timing and rhythm, his off-platform throws, his short to intermediate. I mean, he's better in the short to intermediate than Arch is, and maybe ever will be. Like he's elite in those areas of the field in terms of being able to throw off platform different areas, but he can't move like Arch. Arch is, I think, better at throwing the football on the move. So every quarterback's got their strengths, their weaknesses. I think for Arch, if I'm looking at X-Man abilities, I think his deep ball is one of them. I think him throwing on the move actually is probably one of them too. Hell, I guess I could say his scrambling ability is underrated if he's running over 20 miles per hour. I could throw that out there too, but no doubt his deep ball is fun to watch because he is as accurate a deep ball passer as I've seen at Texas in a really long time. All right, I was going to get to the defense, but we'll save that for next hour. We come back, we got what the facts, what the stats. We'll get into that on the other side. Plenty of NFL factoids and college football factoids for you when we come back right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Loho and Rod Davis coming back on the home. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to some what the facts, what the stats here. There's some good ones here. We've talked about this before with Patrick Mahomes, because at one point in that game, it looked like the Chargers were gonna beat the Kansas City Chiefs because they were up by 10 points on them. They were up double digits in that game. Once again, Patrick Mahomes proven, I don't know if anybody's better when they've been down double digits in NFL history, period. Like if you go, how about this? Patrick Mahomes, this comes from NFL research. Patrick Mahomes is 13-12 in games where his team trailed by 10 plus points. The only quarterback with a winning record in such situations since at least 1950. For context, Tom Brady, 36-61 in games where his team trailed by 10 plus points. And I've given you the numbers about the playoffs. Usually when you trail double digits in the playoffs, you got no shot at winning. That's usually all she wrote. And that Patrick Mahomes, only quarterback that I could find with a winning record when down double digits in playoff games. Dude's just a freak, man. Like I said, and he did it again. And he did it this time without Rashee Rice. There's something about his clutch gene that's a little different than everybody else. And by the way, guys, he's having like his worst season ever again. Through weeks 1 through 4, his passing yards, worst in his career. If you look at this weeks 1 through 4 this season, compared to the same span in his career, like just the start of the season, he's having his worst start in his career in terms of passing yards, worst start to a season in terms of his touchdown interception ratio. His passer rating, 89.7, is the worst it's been to start a season, some of the first 4 weeks, and EPA per dropback. All those. The worst numbers that we've ever seen from Patrick Mahomes. Yet the clutch gene is getting better and better. His receiving core last year, worst receiving core we've ever seen in Kansas City Chiefs, yet clutch gene, better and better. It defies like logic right now. It's crazy. Don't make any damn sense, man. That dude it's going to be tough even for the Texans, like I said, for everybody to beat him, because they're not winning pretty now. Like, they don't win pretty anymore. They don't have a pretty offense. I told you guys that. It is a dink and duck offense. It's often hard to watch that offense. But in terms of pulling off clutch play, they did in this game versus the Chargers. They got on the board with a 54-yard touchdown from Xavier Worthy, longest air yards touchdown in Patrick Mahomes' career, and then had a couple of clutch plays from Xavier Worthy down the stretch, a little bit of Travis Kelce to keep you in the game early. That was pretty much the offense. Done. Starting running back out, don't matter. Like, that is like I said, it's miraculous how they pull it off. But like I said, nobody's more clutch than the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. All right, a couple of other nuggets here. Oh, by the way, if you know who's got the most interceptions in the NFL right now? Anthony Richardson. Patrick Mahomes is second.
Crazy.
Like, isn't that crazy? Like, I'm saying it. Go watch them, guys. It ain't pretty. It's ugly, and I can't even tell you how they're doing it half the time. Teams are outplaying the Kansas City Chiefs, but they're just more clutch than everybody else. It's wild. How about NFL underdogs? We've talked about this. Underdogs of at least 5.5 points. We've been keeping up with it all season long. NFL underdogs of at least 5.5 or more points are now 17-4-1 against the spread, 11-11 straight up. So pretty damn good if you hit underdogs of at least 5.5 points. So something about the dogs, man. The big dogs.
Yeah.
These days, they're
Patriots.
doing really well.
Patriots didn't come through on their end, though.
Patriots didn't come through. Chargers, I guess,
Chargers
came through,
did.
right?
They were 7.5.
And Jacksonville. Wasn't Jacksonville a big dog?
I think Jacksonville was a big dog. I think there was.
But what they lose by? What they lose? What they know? They
lost by 4,
was it 6?
Right?
Yeah, so 6. Yeah,
there was
6,
another one that came through
that was
too.
another.
I think
it was like 4 of them. You're right. I forget the other.
The Giants did on Thursday.
The Giants did too. That's what I'm saying. It's early on. These games were really competitive. You see a big dog. There's a reason that the NFL, you shouldn't have lines that big, like a touchdown, even if the team seems like they're a bad team. Yeah, the NFL's about matchups and how teams match up with each other. And you'd be surprised, some teams just match up really well with other teams. And it makes no sense at all, but they do. And they play those teams well. And I think we're seeing that more and more in the early parts of this season. All right, couple of other factoids and what the facts says. I got some, but there are a couple of these I think I want to throw into a Roch rant later on. But I'll give you one, probably the most. I'll give you this one, even though I want to do a rant about this team too later on this week. The only quarterback who is 4-0 right now against the spread or better this season, Sam freaking Darnold, the only one. How about that? Did you ever think Sam Darnold would be right now at leading and undefeated?
Did I think Sam Darnold will be leading the most dominant team in football right now?
Right. Come on.
And I mean, like, that score was close because they just choked it away in the fourth quarter, but they were dominating all game.
They were beating up on Green Bay. And then you're right, Green Bay came back and made it interesting. But
yeah, Green Bay scored 22 points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
22 of their 29 came in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, Green Bay is interesting too. People haven't paid attention to them because they were winning with Malik Willis in there. Now Jordan Love came back, and then they ended up losing the game.
Yeah.
So some weird stuff going on there. But Minnesota. That's right now. If you're asking me what the biggest surprise is of the season, it's either Minnesota or Washington so far. Right,
it's
Minnesota.
It's Minnesota.
It was New Orleans
because Washington, you were like new coach, new quarterback, and Jaden Daniels. There may be some things in there, and maybe they'll figure something out. But Minnesota, you were like, yeah, JJ McCarthy went down. It's Sam Darnold, same coach. You get Brian Flores, but the same head coach. There was no reason to expect him being this good.
I don't disagree, but I will say they've had a better, more stable franchise.
Yeah.
And you're talking about an absolute dumpster fire of a franchise in Washington.
They are, but they have a new ownership now.
From the top down.
They do have ownership now. Dan Snyder's gone.
That's the whole point. It just got it. It just happened, dude. You act like it's been there for a long time. No. They were a dumpster fire like last year. And it's the way they're doing it. Like, guys, we just talked about how CJ Stroud had the greatest rookie season of all time, right? We were never going to see anything like it. Guys, Jaden Daniels is doing some of that stuff right now. He is literally doing it right now. He's doing things that CJ Stroud there. He is basically on the cusp, if he keeps this up, of having the greatest rookie season for a quarterback ever.
So the rule
and we just saw it.
Do not be the first quarterback drafted.
You're right. They're like, what? It's like we just saw it. Oh man, nobody's gonna be able to do what CJ Stroud just did. It's like actually Jaden Daniels is doing some of it right now. And so I agree with you. I think Minnesota's more surprising because nobody had faith that Sam Darnold would have this kind of bounce back. I mean, Sam Darnold's doing some freaky, crazy stuff, and I gave you the metrics last week about where he was ranked in QBR and passer rating. I mean, he's one of your leaders in all of the most important quarterback metrics right now. He's 11. He's first in passing touchdowns. He is first in yards per attempt. He is second in passer rating right now. Sixth in passing yards right now. Sam freaking Darnold. Living up to the expectations people had from, I don't know, years ago when he was drafted out of USC.
We just got to tell Quinn the message. The number 2 quarterback in the draft, pick number 2, not a problem. Not a bad thing. Last 2 years, that number 2 picks look pretty good.
It looked pretty damn good. No, you're right about that. So we'll get to it. Matter of fact, we'll have that discussion too. Like most surprising NFL story through the first 4 weeks of the season. And man, hard not to pick. I remember it was New Orleans like through the first 2 weeks of the season.
Look, I'll say Seahawks.
And they're still surprising.
Seahawks are going to be up there too if they win tonight.
Yep.
They win tonight. They're undefeated still.
Yep. In fact, maybe we'll save that conversation for tomorrow and see if the Seahawks are also in that conversation. I'm with you. That's a good one. Yeah. New coach, new offense. Geno Smith playing out of his mind. Yeah. Okay. We'll get into that because I think that's one we can table for later on this week. But we come back, we got to talk Texas football. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian. We'll hear from Arch Manning. We'll talk about Arch Manning's performance. Highest graded Pro Football Focus quarterback in week 5. Yeah, that's how good Arch Manning was versus Mississippi State. We'll discuss that. Also talk about that Texas defense a little bit. All that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the Horn.
You know I've been searching for someone who can share what's special.
All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a Smooth Soul Monday edition of the Rodcast. That's when Patrick plays jams intended to soothe the tortured soul of sports fans who might have had a tough weekend because of the performance of their team, one way or the other, but also for those who have enjoyed a stress-free, fun-filled weekend to have to transition to really a hectic, that's just stressful work week, as we all have to do with traffic and meetings and other adulting that none of us want to do in order to make that a smooth transition for you. That's the purpose of a Smooth Soul Monday. So we appreciate Patrick hooking us up there. He also hooks us up with the topic for the Big Fat Poll today. That is already posted on the Horns X account at the Horn ATX. You can go check that out. Patrick, what is the topic for the Big Fat Poll of the day?
Who was the MVP for Texas against Mississippi State? Is our poll. We gave you 4 options: Arch Manning, DeAndre Moore, Colin Simmons, and Anthony Hill. Right now, of course, Arch Manning is winning. No big surprise there. Colin Simmons coming in second, though, at 22%, DeAndre Moore at 19%, and Anthony Hill at 8%.
No, Anthony Hill, people were really impressed. Sorry, Colin Simmons, people were really impressed with him. Anthony Hill kind of had one of his, he had a sack too. And last week had that breakout performance as well. I just think, there's so many guys making plays on the defense. You kind of, guys get lost in the shuffle. You had 6 sacks in that game, and you had 5 different players with those 6 sacks for Texas. So defensively, there are a lot of different guys contributing. We'll talk about that defense. Here's Sark talking about the Texas defense as well. And we'll get into, of course, Arch Manning's performance versus Mississippi State. We'll go behind the burn orange curtain next segment, hear from Steve Sarkisian talking about his team as well. But before we do any of that, let's first get updated. Let's get educated. Let's get informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn Headlines.
All right, your Horn Headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the MLB, the Astros finished their regular season, winning both games against the Guardians before the game Sunday was canceled due to a long rain delay. The Astros are now set to take on the Tigers and former manager A.J. Hinch in the AL wildcard round starting Tuesday. The Rangers wrapped up their season by sweeping the Angels with several young players coming through in the final games. The Rangers finished with a 78-84 record on the season, and Nathan Eovaldi was able to pick up his 12th win of the season in the final game. In the NFL, the Texans came back to score a touchdown with 18 seconds left to beat the Jaguars and improved to 3-1 on the season. The Vikings and Chiefs remained undefeated after wins on Sunday. However, the Chiefs fear that Rashee Rice may be lost for the season. Tonight, the Titans look for their first win against the Dolphins, and the Seahawks try to stay unbeaten against the Lions. And in college football, Texas got a win over Mississippi State 35-13 with Arch Manning throwing for 324 yards and 2 touchdowns. However, they dropped to number 2 in the rankings after Alabama topped Georgia 41-34. Texas now gets a bye week to rest some players before the Red River rivalry the following Saturday. And that is your Horn Headlines.
All right. Thank you, Patrick, for the Horn Headlines. Let's get to talking about the Texas performance versus Mississippi State. There are some people that were disappointed in Texas not playing completely up to the standard that we expect for Texas. I would say Arch Manning played to the standard. All right, I'll say that. Arch Manning played to that standard, 26 of 31. One of those incompletions was a drop. Probably could have been a 70-yard touchdown, or so you could have had it. Probably got to 400 yards passing, but he was at 335, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 3 big-time throws, according to Pro Football Focus. 0 turnover-worthy plays. They got him at a 94 overall grade, a 93.3% adjusted completion percentage. That is taking into account wide receivers dropping passes and basically the wide receiver responsibility in some of those incompletions. So they got him at a 93.3% completion percentage. And I say he also had 5 rushes for 34 yards, and he had a touchdown there as well. I said it, earlier in this show. And we just basically broke it down. Only one play I remember him putting the ball potentially in harm's way, but it was also putting himself in harm's way. He scrambled, tried to slide and get down. It was awkward, and he ended up getting, kind of squeezed and sandwiched in between 2 defenders. And that was ugly. He popped up. He's tough. Probably as a quarterback, especially since, Quinn Ewers, your starting quarterback, was in street clothes. Probably shouldn't put yourself in harm's way like that. And even talked about how his grandparents always call him before the game, say, hey, you need to slide, son. You need to slide. You get out of harm's way, get out of bounds. Don't be taking hits. And, the one thing they told him not to do, end up taking in that situation. So that's the one time I can remember, I think, him putting the ball in harm's way in the entire game. I believe the entire game, he pretty much made the best, the most, I think the best and the most rational decision for that moment. And like I said, I think that one play is the one I remember. I was like, yeah, probably should have taken a hit. And then I could have ended up, getting the ball jarred loose or something like that. But that's it. And think about how many we saw in the ULM game, guys, in the first start. What, 6 moments like that? 6. He had 2 picks in the game. There was, I know there was 2 other passes that I think were close to being intercepted, or at least in turnover-worthy plays potentially. The ball was on the ground. I think, remember, that was like a botched snap at one time, and the ball was on the ground there. It was just it looked like someone making their first start. Even though we saw the flashes of brilliance, it looked like someone making their first start. And I told you guys last week, I said, watch the exponential leap of improvement from start 1 to start 2, because he's a prodigy. So that's what we're tracking. And people were upset about the first time. I was like, you expect to see that. There's no baseline of consistency. You see the flashes of brilliance, but you also see the WTF moments. That's what freshmen do. And he was still a young, inexperienced quarterback and making his first start. But if he is indeed a prodigy, like I said he'll have exponential improvement from start 1 to start 2. I mean, you won't even recognize the guy. We did not recognize him because he looked like one of the best quarterbacks. He looked like a top 5 quarterback in the country, just as a backup playing against Mississippi State SEC competition. He looked like one of the top 5 best quarterbacks in the country, easily. That I got a chance to watch, and I think Pro Football Focus, their scores, their grades actually reflect that. And I don't know if he was the best quarterback in college football this past weekend. They had him as the highest graded quarterback in week 5, but he was definitely in the conversation. That's how good he was. And I think that's what you get with prodigies. The more they play, and I don't use that term with everybody, right? Some guys are good players, and everybody can't be a prodigy. I wasn't a prodigy. Took me 4 years to turn myself into an NFL player. Right? Baron Sorrell wasn't necessarily a prodigy, damn good player, but now he's the best defensive end you got. Right? Gunnar Helm wasn't necessarily a prodigy, but now he's an NFL player. Jake Majors, but there are prodigies, right? Kelvin Banks was one. Guy's been playing like a first-round NFL talent since he was a freshman. Literally since he was a freshman. Prodigy. I mean, CB sent me a graphic about Kelvin. We don't talk enough about Kelvin Banks. We take him for granted now. We're basically at this point, we have fatigue bragging so much about how good he's been because he's been good for so long. So we got basically Kelvin Banks fatigue, right? Do we even talk about how excellent Kelvin Banks is game to game? We don't. Because we've done it for so long. We've been doing it for 3 years already, since he was a freshman. He's the only SEC offensive tackle without a single quarterback hit or sack allowed this season. Shout out to my man CB. He's got 1 pressure allowed. Yeah. Prodigy. As soon as he stepped on the field. I played with guys like Derek Johnson was like that. As soon as he stepped out there, he was honestly, guy probably was projecting to be a first rounder, like the after his first year as a starter. Like he was already that good. He was already that good. Bijan Robinson, like, remember we all saw Bijan the first year and went, well, he's as good as any running back I've seen in the country. I've watched a lot of college football. That guy, he's just as good as any of those guys. He's just a freshman, but he is. And since then, he still was kind of the best running back in college football. Literally since he was a freshman. Right? Those are the kind of Colin Simmons is like that right now. He didn't have a start under his belt. The more he plays, the more plays he makes. And that's why you just got to play him more. Because the more I play, they have an accelerated rate of development as they, cultivate their craft. Like there's a Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hour rule. Yeah, for us, for me, just for you, for most of us, yeah, 10,000 hours. It's going to take you to master something. Not for a prodigy. Don't take them 10,000 hours. They may get it in 2,000. They get a little bit quicker than everybody else. That's Arch Manning. I think Colin Simmons is in that category. That's what Kelvin Banks was in. And like I said, you don't get a lot of them because a lot of them don't exist. They're rare by definition. But Texas, I think Texas got a couple. I think Ryan Wingo is probably in that category too. He had a little injury in that game, so that may slow his progress, but I think he's in that category. I think you got a couple of guys like that, but that's not, that's going to be, 1 to 2% of your team. The rest, everybody else is they cultivate their craft and they're on a different path and rate of development than everybody else. And that's fine. That's most of the team. And some guys are a little bit faster, but the prodigy thing for me, those guys are truly special because the more they play, they get exponentially better in just a short time. It's an accelerated growth. And that's why you get them in the academic world, you get a project like, oh no, we got to skip them ahead 2 grades. They're actually doing a disservice to their peers and to themselves by dominating their peers in every subject. It's not helping them. It's not helping the peers. Move them up, challenge them. The more you challenge them, the better they'll get. And then they find out like, oh man, okay, now even a 5th grader that we put in the 7th grade, they're still outperforming the 7th graders. All right, put them in 9th grade then. Put them in that. They end up in Stanford by the time they're like 16. All right, something crazy like that. But I think that's what you have with Arch. I think the more he plays, the better he's going to get. And that's why Sark's big on the hard coaching because Sark sees it too. So it's like, well, if this guy doesn't actually become a guy that's drafted in the top 5 to 10 picks and is not a guy that's sitting down in New York for the Heisman ceremony at least once, who failed? Sark's gonna look at the man in the mirror there. Be like, that's probably on me. He's got the genetics. The quarterback is a family business. Everything, every possible advantage he's got. And I think Sark understands that if he doesn't reach his ultimate, capability, it's probably going to be on Sark. And that's why Sark's coaching him so hard. And Sark's admitting it too. He's admitting like, man, I'm coaching him hard. And go watch. I guess we won't have many opportunities, but go back and watch the game. Go back and watch the game when everybody's celebrating how great Arch is and this touchdown pass. And sometimes when Sark brings the sideline, and there are times where he's, loving on him and talking about how great he is. There are times where he's talking about, hey, early in that drive, remember that play? Remember play 3? They're having serious conversation. And it ain't just, the celebration of Arch and how, and how fantastic the last play was. He's talking about 2-3 plays ago and he's coaching them hard. And there are 2 clips I want to play here before we get start talking about some other topics and get into the Texas defense a little bit. There are 2 clips. One is do we have these, Patrick? One's of Arch and one's of Sark. And let's play the Sark one because Sark, this is actually on the field after the game with the field reporter. And Arch is, I believe, standing right next to him. And they're both, getting ready to be interviewed. And Sark's in a good mood, which he wasn't in a great mood. So I think he was a little disappointed in the performance of his team, at least in the first half. And in the second half, they were a different team. But listen to Sark and the way he describes the coaching method and dynamic between he and Arch.
Ready to go, and I think Quinn's probably helping Arch with me ripping his ass. Even though he's 26 of 31 for over 300 yards, I was still ripping his ass today. But that's what we do around here.
That's a lot of voices in your head, Coach and Quinn.
That's what we do around here. I love it. It's like, nah, yeah, everybody else gonna be telling you how great you are. That's good. That's good. You know what I'm gonna be doing? I'm gonna be getting in your arse about the play 3 plays ago where you didn't make the right read, or the footwork that I saw that I didn't quite like, or the mechanics that I thought were a little sloppy. Because I mean, that's what I love that. As a matter of fact, let's hear from Arch, because Arch, and when he was talking to the media after, and I love how they describe it playfully, right? Sark was smiling there, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm getting in that arse, man. I'm coaching him up." And listen to the way Arch describes it too. He's almost in a joking way describing like, "Oh man, you should see us at practice. This dude is on me." Here's Arch.
You have fun diving into the end zone today?
What?
You have fun diving into the end
Yeah,
zone?
I thought I was in. I was in.
You were.
Yeah, well, I think that's the good thing about Sark is he always coaches me pretty hard. You should come to a practice. It's pretty intense.
Can you get us in?
Yeah.
I think you maybe should have slid on that 8-yard carry.
Yeah, my family's gonna get mad at me for not sliding. I think every time I call my grandfather, he says get down or get out of bounds. So I probably should have done that.
All right, so there he goes. Sorry, that's a shout out to my man Corey Mose over at KView. That sound courtesy of him and his team. But they saying there, coach, man, you should come to practice. This dude is coaching me hard, and ultimately, that's why the Mannings wanted him at Texas. They want, and I bet part of the agreement was, man, don't treat him like a celebrity quarterback. I need him to be coached up. We need him coached hard. Don't treat him with the kid gloves. Don't treat him don't be scared. He's gonna transfer if you're too hard on him, because he don't, his feelings get hurt. Nope, you ain't got to worry about none of that. He ain't going nowhere. He gonna be there, and then you coach him hard, coach him up. And I think that was part of the agreement. I think that was part of the understanding is that he would be coached hard, and it wouldn't be some kind of leisurely development, and that they would allow him to develop at his own pace and those things. Like, no, we need you to be meticulous because we are Mannings. So we are the first family football. Trust me, we'll coach him up too. We're all gonna be on it. We'll coach him up too. But that everyday coaching from you, we want it to be something that you're very demanding of him, because he's got a lot of upside, and he's not gonna reach it unless we pull it out of him. Every fiber at every possible moment. And I think it's great. Coaching hard, man. Coach him up. That's what's going on. Yeah. And so getting to the Texas offense a little bit. And I've talked about this before. Guys, the running game for Texas, and we can even see it in the second half stats, the first half stats and the second half stats for Texas. The first half stats, they ran for 10 yards. 10 rushing yards, actually, in the first half. In the first half of that game. They led with the pass. I think Sark's smart enough to know that we cannot be totally balanced to start games off. There's a time for balance in the game. And that time is probably once you've established control, once you've gained kind of some control of the game, and once you have dictated the terms of the matchup. But the leverage you have to dictate those terms in the matchup is the passing game. That's what opponents fear. That's what you lead with. And I believe now we're at that point. In that game, Arch had a 70+% early down pass rate. Sark was leading with the pass. I think a lot of it was getting his young quarterback in a rhythm. That matters too. But I think at this point he understands, my strength is the passing game. The injuries at the running back position are a big part of why the running game can't lead the way. And you benched Jaden Blue in this game too. So on top of the injuries at the running back position, when everybody at the running back position has been injured at least, once and nicked up and limped out of a game or missed a game, now you have to bench your best running back because they underperformed in a critical situation or multiple situations where he fumbled the football.
Yeah. And I do think that when Quinn's in there, you may see more times where he trusts Quinn to make the decision or run an RPO or do whatever you may see a couple more runs with Quinn just because Quinn can read the defense and understand when there needs to be a run play, and he can look at it and say, okay, this feels like a time we go ahead and just hand the ball off because I can see that there's not going to be much open for me in the passing game. So you may have that with Arch. You're calling the plays and really trying to stick with what you're calling because you don't want to put him out there and then try and get him to be reading defenses when it's his second live game in his college career starting. You don't want to put him out there and expect him to be able to make that read pre-snap necessarily. So I think with Quinn, you may see a little bit more of it just because he'll find the plays where he feels it'll work. But at the same part, I'm with you. It's not going to be a huge piece of their offense early just because they don't have that faith. And Jaden Blue, as much as you're not going to hang everything on one game and say those fumbles are going to be his characteristic. At the same part, it's a thing. So you have to be careful about it, and everyone's going to be going for the ball for him now. The next two games, everyone's going to be going for it. So
yep, I agree with that. They're punching at it. I'd be punching at it.
Yeah.
And for Jaden Blue, it was a thing that popped up in the bowl game as well. And I think Sark was a little disappointed in Jaden Blue's performance, and that's why he ended up being benched in that game. Trey Wisner ended up stepping up, playing well, but the running game didn't showcase itself until the end of the game. And I've always said, and matter of fact, Sark reiterated. So Sark basically confirmed it. I said, I've always said Sark wants to open with the pass and he wants to close with the run. That's how he wants to. That's his MO. That's his blueprint to win. And all the speed that he acquires and all the speed he collects on offense, it is so you have to chase that speed, pre-snap motion, deep balls, misdirection. You chase that speed for 3 quarters, wears you out. And then by the time you get to the 4th quarter, that those big humans that Sark has, that he's also acquired, that he's obsessed with, a lot of speed and big humans, that's when the big humans impose their will because you're worn out, you're tired, and you've been fighting with these big humans for 3 quarters, and they just overwhelm you in the 4th because you've been chasing that Sark speed around for 3 quarters. And then somewhere in between there, that 1st quarter and that 4th quarter, 1st quarter with the speed, 4th quarter with the big humans, there's a Sark run. And that I've talked about that run that is characteristic of a Sark offense, all right, and a Sark blueprint. There's that run that separates and gives him the lead, and he's supposed to have the lead by the 4th quarter. And if he has the lead by the 4th quarter, then you choke them out with the run game. That's what he wants to do. That's ideally how Sark would like every game to play out. And he finally confirmed that's how I want to do it. Well, he didn't have to confirm it. You can just watch the games play out. But this season, more than ever, opening with the pass, I think you got to be gratuitous. I think you got to be extreme in opening with the pass. And he has become extreme with it. Remember, Quinn Ewers they didn't run the ball with Quinn in a UTSA game to the 10th play of the game. How many run plays did they have in the first 10 plays of the game with Arch? 2? It's like 2 or 3 run plays. I want to say your early down pass rate was upwards of 70% with Arch. Quarterback starting his 2nd game. He knew. He's like, no, you got to start with the pass. We can't start with the run. Texas can't open up with the run. Your running game isn't potent enough. It's not formidable enough. Your running backs, they continue to get injured. They're a mash unit pretty much. They're still good. I still got faith in them, but it would be irresponsible for you to force the identity of this offense and this team to be wrapped up in the run game in the running back room. It's got to be a complementary thing now.
It is. The hope is, though, that now you get out of this week with 3 healthy running backs. Mentally, maybe not healthy, but physically, your top 3 guys are all healthy. And now you can go and then Colin Page and Belton Gardner, if you can get them a little bit back up, and then you're back to where you were at the beginning of the season. So you're back to not great because you still don't have CJ Baxter, you still are missing Clay, but if you're able to get those guys back, you feel a little bit better going into the tough part of your schedule. But yeah, I just don't know if he has. We always talk about Sark's circle of trust. And it just doesn't really feel like any of the running backs are in the circle of trust right now.
Trey Wisner might be the only one that kind of is because he hasn't necessarily done anything outside of it. But you're right. But I'm with you. I don't know if he wants to. He's not gonna necessarily feed them the football or let them be a catalyst for the offense. So I'm with you. I don't think he trusts them in that regard. No. Trust his quarterback and his wide receivers to set the tone, meaning like a tone setter, basically.
Yes.
He doesn't trust him to be a tone setter.
Yeah, because good as Trey Wisner did a good job of just keeping the ball moving and things like that, but he was not going to be an explosive play guy for you necessarily.
Not to set the tone, not early.
And not a guy where you can go, man, they're gonna have to respect our run. It's more of no, he can run the ball. Good, but it's not they're not having to change the defense for him, basically.
Nope. You gotta, you basically have to your defense has to respect Texas passing game. You don't necessarily have to game plan to stop Texas's running attack, but you gotta game plan. Matter of fact, your game plan is to stop the passing attack. You want Texas running the football. You like that early on in the game, if that's the case. So yeah, I think Texas. I'm not upset about the run game early. Some Longhorn fans are. I knew the Texas run. I've been saying it all season long. The running game is not going to be very potent like early on for this team. It's going to be something you close with, but you're a pass first team, whether you like it or not. You're a pass first team. Also, speaking of like the pass first, I will say that DeAndre Moore having a great game, having the best game he's ever had in his career, over 100 yards on those 4 targets. My prediction that you're going to have at least for half the games this season, you're going to have a different leading receiver for at least half the games. You're pretty close already. Helm, Bond, Wingo. Hell, now you throw in DeAndre Moore. So for 4 of the 5 games so far this season, you've had a different leading receiver. And that's also a good sign, too, for how healthy the offense is going to be. Like, and I threw this out there, too. I don't know if you're going to – I mean, I guess Bond maybe get close to 1,000 for you. But I don't know if you may just have one receiver barely get to 1,000, and I don't know if you're going to have a 1,000-yard rusher.
No, I can't imagine what at this point.
Sark's streak of 12 straight years with 1,000-yard rusher. I think that's over.
It may be. I mean, that's now Blue got a lot of yards early, so maybe he'll get back in there if he starts to trust him more. If he holds the ball, I mean, because
he's basically already missed 2 games after being benched this game and missing the other game.
Yeah,
he's already.
But you got to add some, man.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. You're gonna add the SEC title game.
So he may be able to get there, but yeah, it is interesting. And like we go to the running backs too. Jared Gibson, whatever happened a couple weeks ago, or I don't know, practice or what, but he felt like he was running the ball a lot more there in the first 2 to 3 weeks, and now it is tailed off to where he doesn't really want to use him a ton.
I feel like that too. Yeah, I don't know what that's about either. It could be a trust thing. Could be, some of the coaches are seeing. I'm not sure. So the running game. I know some Longhorn fans are concerned about it. I'm not concerned about it because I knew it would be what it is right now.
Yeah,
this is what I expected out of the running game. So I'm not upset or overly shocked by it. I think your offense is still fine. You're gonna be different. You're gonna be a pass first team, and with your 2 quarterbacks and your wide receivers, why wouldn't you be? Why wouldn't you be, guys? I think if Sark wants that balance, the only thing he wants balance on is in the box score at the end of the game. Because I think you had 31 passes and 31 rushes, if I'm not mistaken, in the game, right? Arch had 31 passes, and I believe ultimately you had 31 rushes as a team. That's where he wants to balance. He wants to be able to say at the end of the score when he goes in there, hey, we were a balanced offense. Look how many times we ran the ball. Look how many times we threw the ball. But if you watch the game, you understand the passing game sets the tone. They open with the pass. And I think that's going to be the story for the rest of the season. And I'm happy with it, that being the case. With if your defense continues to play well, you have a great complementary formula to win that way. Because ultimately, your defense should get you stops early, and you should have a lead early because you led with the pass. And then if that is the case, then that'll allow your pass rush to end up making more plays because you'll force teams into throwing the football out of desperation to catch up with Texas so that they can avoid the run that Texas ultimately can go on and leave teams behind and blow the game wide open. And that's when your pass rush, 6 sacks versus Mississippi State, that's when it starts to assert its presence in the game. And it's all complimentary, but you got to get up in the game early for a lot of that stuff to work for Texas, for teams to become desperate so you can break out your NASCAR package, so you can use a young Colin Simmons. Young Colin Simmons ain't going to hold up as well against a team that just wants to run the football and run power at you. That's when they expose Colin Simmons. That's when they make him look like a freshman. You want them in 2nd and 7, 2nd and 8, 3rd and long, where it's like, all right, let's put Colin Simmons out there for 2 straight downs because they're going to throw it and just let him tee off. So the formula to me is it's perfect for what the strength of the team is. And so don't be overly concerned. Remember, I told you guys it's time for Sark to become an extremist about some things. The passing game is one of them this season. Be all about the pass. And I think ultimately that game was another example of it. All right, we come back. We'll hear from Sark. Sark spoke to the media about some of the things we just discussed, but also we'll hear from Sark talking about that defense. We're still on the defensive side of things, so we haven't discussed enough of the Texas defense, and we'll do that on the other side behind the burnt orange curtain right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, let's go with all right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to some Texas football conversations here from Steve Sarkisian. Before we get into back to the Texas offense, I know there's a lot of conversation about Arch Manning and what Texas saw, what Longhorn fans saw from that Texas offense. I want to talk about the Texas defense for a little while. I still think the Texas defense is really impressive. I know people are upset with the rush defense. I think that's a little overblown. They ran the ball 50 times, guys. They got that's a lot. And it was pretty, evident that they had a game plan to just keep away from Texas and just try to convert as much as they could. Remember early on they went for 2 4th downs. They went for a 4th down in their own, deep in their own territory to start the game on that first drive. So they kind of took a little bit of that Joey McGuire recipe, like, hey, let's convert 4th down, keep the football as long as we could. And it worked. They had the ball for 7+ minutes on that first drive. but they ran the ball 50 times for 150 yards. I mean, a team's run the ball 50 times, they're gonna gain some yards. I mean, that's especially in SEC teams. So it was intentional, and they used power and gap concepts. So they were running downhill on Texas, and yes, other teams will try. As a matter of fact, Oklahoma's probably gonna take this exact recipe, this exact game plan by Jeff Lebby, and try to use it and replicate it on their own. But I still thought defense played well. How about this stat? And shout out to At Horn Sports, because I got it from them. It's a good stat about how good this Texas rush defense was, even though they still ran 450 yards. They ran it 50 times. 21 of their 50 rushing attempts went for 2 or fewer yards. It was basically them. You can control the game through the running game without necessarily gaining a lot of yards, and that's exactly what Mississippi State did. They controlled the game. The way they controlled the game was controlled the pace and dictate the terms of the game by keeping the ball out of Texas' hands. And when Texas got it, they scored quickly, right? As soon as they got the football. They limited possessions, and that's important. You limit possessions against Texas, you can limit the run. So after the opening drive of the game, Mississippi State had 39 carries for 104 yards. So they averaged 2.6 yards per carry after the opening drive. You're going to run the ball that much. I think Texas actually did keep them under wraps relatively well. But I will admit they showed some cracks that you may be able to exploit against Texas. Power running game, but you better be committed to it like they were. And I don't think they were that successful, but their commitment to it allowed them to control the game. And they took some shots and they got behind some of our DBs, but they were so committed to the run. I think Texas countered by overly committing to stop the run and got their one-on-ones on the outside. And when they got their one-on-ones, they took their shots. They didn't connect on them, but they took them. They connected on one, I think, one of those deep shots. But that's what other teams will try to do, and they may have better personnel to do it. But one of the stars defensively in that game had to be Colin Simmons. He ended up with 2 sacks in that game. I think he was tied for the lead in tackles. He actually had a standout performance, and I think he's only going to get better. Here's Sark talking about the young prodigy on the defensive side of the ball, Colin Simmons.
He continues to grow in that capacity, and I think even today we had a little bit more of elaborate third down package where he was kind of standing in, over some guards. We were letting him rush on guards, and we were letting him rush off on tackles off the edge. He was impactful in the run game. We're seeing his impact in the run game more as the season's gone on as well. So he's a really good football player that is willing to learn and to grow. He plays with a real sense of confidence in his ability, but yet he comes in here every day with a real sense of humility to try to get better. And that's a sign of a really good young player.
Yeah, I mean, that was one thing I was going to bring up. Another Johnny Nansen exotic look that he broke out versus Mississippi State. It wasn't just Colin Simmons over the guards in the B gap. He would have Trey Moore doing it. Essentially, he had a 3 down front. He had 3 down linemen, and it was, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, most of the time it was 2 D tackles and 1 D in, maybe Barron Sorrell or an Ethan Burke, but one of the D tackles would be a little wide, maybe a Vern Broughton. And they would put the edge rushers into the B gap, mugging the B gap, basically kind of standing up in a 2-point stance over the B gap. Sometimes they'd rush, sometimes they'd spy, and sometimes they drop. Never know which one it was. And they did it with the linebackers. Anthony Hill would do it. And I've seen the linebackers do it before. I've never seen the edge rushers do it. So that's a little bit of a Johnny Nansen exotic that he threw out there. And, once Johnny Nansen throws something out there, he doesn't, discard it once he's used it. He usually just adds it to his catalog, if you will. And you see it situationally, team to team, week to week, depending on if they need it or not, or if it's applicable or not. And so that's another new wrinkle. I've not seen that before. And I believe Anthony Hill's first sack, he's mugging the B gap. And he gets that sack. They noticed something about the guards because think about it, 3 of their 6 sacks came from guys matched up against the interior offensive line. Barron Sorrell's sack, he was bumped inside on a NASCAR package. Vern Broughton gets a strip sack, fumble recovery. He was inside, and then you got Anthony Hill mugging the B gap to get his sack. So half your sacks, you were matched up on the guards, and that's why maybe they had these guys mugging the guards. because maybe they noticed something about confusing the pass protections with that strategy. But let's go to Sark talking about the game overall. It was a sloppy game. Overall, it was a sloppy game for Tech. They didn't play to the standard. Still found a way to, pretty much blow out Mississippi State. But here's Sark talking about how sloppy the game looked at times, and for Texas, how that's something that they can't afford to have happen week to week in the SEC.
Without a doubt, we took them seriously. We just didn't play great. Again, I don't think anybody wants to jump off sides or wants to hold or wants to fumble the ball like that. That was not about want to. We wanted to play really good. We practiced really good. Sometimes these games happen, and I think, again, we're fortunate enough where we're good enough where we can overcome those things, and I think we're talented enough to overcome it. I think we've got good enough coaches to overcome it, and I think that we've got the mindset and the poise and composure to overcome it. A lot of teams can't overcome some of the stuff that we overcame today. And I don't know in years past if we could have overcome what we overcame today. But again, a lot of credit to our defense to put out the fires, when some of those miscues occurred on the offensive side of the ball. And a credit to the defense. They were on the field a ton in the first half of this game. I think 21 minutes they were on the field, and then we were able to kind of even it out a little in the second half. But a credit to those guys to keep us kind of just hanging in there. And like I told the team at halftime, I'm glad we were faced with some of this adversity, and we're going to have to fight our way through it and overcome it. But let's not forget, we're ahead 14-6. It wasn't like we were down 14-6. So, hey, there's a lot to be learned from this game. There's a lot to be gained from this game. But again, I think the poise and composure we exuded is going to be something that we're going to be able to fall back on down the road, because we're going to be in some tough games. And so this was just a good start for us to kind of get exposed to it.
And Sark was also critical of himself. I love that Sark has those man in the mirror moments where, he's quick to blame that guy, the man in the mirror himself. He's like, hey man, I screwed up on this one. I probably should have made a different decision or a different call. And he admitted that he took some points off the board for the Longhorns and decision to go for it after instead of taking the points in the field goal. Sark wanted to go for it. I think it ended up being a 4th and 3 or something like that when he ended up going for it.
They were offsides on the field goal, right? And then so the points.
Yes.
So it was 3 were on the board. Then they say offsides. Right, we'll go for it on 4th and don't get it. Yeah.
He said he wanted to go for it on 4th after getting the call. And I didn't like the play call. Number one, that was a weird play call. And he was trying to get, it's a rub concept, trying to get a rub route, but I didn't like the play call. But the game was so tight, you could argue that Sark, for some reason, I think that was an emotional decision by him. I think he was frustrated with how bad the offense had been performed or how inconsistent the offense was, and he wanted points on the board, like touchdown on the board, not just points on the board. Here's Sark talking about that decision and how he thinks it was, in retrospect, the wrong one.
I would say if I could play Monday morning quarterback like you guys do, I would have left the 3 points on the board, but I don't get to do that. I have to make real-time decisions. I had made a decision on 3rd down. If it was 4th or 3 or less, I was going to go for it. So when they jumped off sides on the field goal, I think it went to 4th and 3. And so I went to my original decision to go for it. You leave 3 points on the board, maybe that changes a little the complexion of the game. So, I could sit here and beat myself up. I beat myself up for something earlier in the game already enough. So, the execution was one. I thought they played what we were running pretty good. We got the look we wanted. They played it pretty good. I wish Arch could have maybe given Isaiah a little better throw. It's going to be a really tough catch for him, but that's human nature. Sometimes it's the throw's not perfect, the catch isn't great, and it falls incomplete. But I'm never going to apologize for us trying to stay aggressive, because our players appreciate us being aggressive, and it wasn't us going rogue. It was something that we believed in, that, hey, this was the number of where we were going to go, and that number came up, and so we went for it.
All right. And here's a cut when they asked Sark to clarify what that mistake that he was beating himself up over early in the game was about. Here's what Sark said.
Oh, it was actually on the fumble, Jaden's first fumble. I had a call that I wanted to call for that exact situation, and I didn't call it, as a matter of fact, and I called that run, and then he fumbled, and so Coach Sark was getting cussed out in his own head.
No, so Coach Steven. Sorry, Coach Steven. All right, that's the difference. But any of the bad calls, we attribute that to Coach Steven. All the good stuff, that's Coach Sark. So that's how we do it, Coach. Yeah, Coach Steven. We've been doing it for the last few years. I think it's a safe way, politically correct way for us to criticize the coach that we love, but do it in a way that's not, overly critical or harsh, I should say. We just say it was Coach Steven.
I really do like it, that second clip too, where you could say he was about to say what the play call was and then realize he doesn't want to give it up because he wants to use it again later. So he's like, I was going to call. You know what? I just messed that call up.
That's true. He's like, that's so special, but you know what? Yeah. No, I love how forthcoming Sark is, though. It is. We haven't had a coach give you info like that. I don't know, ever. I don't think Texas has ever had a coach that gives you that kind of inside info, that he was upset with himself about a play earlier in the game and gives you that kind of stuff. So I do appreciate Sark and the media availabilities. All right, we'll come back. We got Off the Record on the other side. We'll come back here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Horn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into a little off the record conversation here. Got a couple of stories that I think we can get to, but I don't know if we'll have time for all of them. But this one, NFL related story. The Jets, the Jets, Jets. They lost to the Broncos, and Aaron Rodgers thought that he put them in position to get a game-winning field goal. The field goal kicker missed it. I think it was like a 50-yarder, which these days actually that's not a long field goal because guys are hitting 50-yarders, like a lot at a very high rate these days. But it was a 50-yarder, and I think one of the things that Aaron Rodgers, at least in the post game, was asked about was the penalties for the Jets, because the Jets had like 13 penalties, like a ton of penalties for like 90 yards. Big reason why offensively they stalled, had a lot of third longs. They just couldn't get any rhythm offensively, but they a lot of self-inflicted wounds. We've talked about that with the Texans. That was the case with the Jets too. So apparently one of the reasons they had a lot of the penalties, and like I said, I didn't watch the entire game, but apparently there was some pre-snap penalties by the offensive line, and Robert Saleh thought, at least he mentioned to the media, that he thought it's because of the cadence of Aaron Rodgers. That basically Aaron Rodgers is known for switching up his cadence, getting defenders to jump off sides who are trying to, basically get a bead on his and track his cadence. So he's known really good at using inflection and different things to try to draw opponents off sides. Well, with the Jets, Robert Saleh is essentially claiming that it's working against the Jets. You may be trying to draw defenders off sides, but you are also responsible for getting our guys to jump, because they don't know when the snap count is, and you are also causing more harm than good at this point. So here is Aaron Rodgers when he's asked about Robert Saleh's comments, and his response makes me think things are a little rocky with the Jets. Jets.
The cadence specifically, Robert said that might be something you guys have to dial back a little bit. Is that something you think could potentially help the situation?
It's one way to do it. The other way is hold them accountable. I mean, we haven't had an issue. We've had one false start. Morgan had one false start, I believe, until this. So, it's been a weapon. We use it every day in practice. We rarely have a false start. And to have, 5 today, it seemed like 4 or 5. Yeah, it seems like an outlier. I don't know if we need to make mass changes based on, kind of an outlier game.
Got coach saying one thing, starting quarterback saying another thing. Never good optics in the media. But something tells me. So, what's your guess? Will they dial back the cadences, or will we continue to get them? I bet my money's on we'll get exactly.
Oh no! He's gonna do it while looking at Robert Saleh in the eyes.
Exactly.
Not gonna stop doing something.
This is a challenge now to him. He's like, what? He's challenging my cadence stuff? Yeah, so I agree with you. You actually might get more.
No, I'm pretty sure there will be a conversation that will be nice, but the general premise will be, don't ever talk to me about an offense ever again. I'm the greatest offensive mind in the history of football. You handle the defense. If you guys would have held him to 0 points, we would have won. Somewhere around that. Not word for word. Somewhere in that world.
No, I'm with you. He's got an ego. I mean, you can tell right there. He's like, what? Because the course of action there is just to be like, yeah, you know what? That's something we asked for. We got to fix that problem. We got to fix it. Yeah. And coach will figure out how to fix it. Just move on. But his ego would not allow him to do that. His ego, he had to take a shot at his coach via the media. And that's Aaron Rodgers in a nutshell. It's like, no. First of all, this is my thing and my offense. I agree with you. It's his offense. And yes, they will have just as many, cadence, different cadences, if not more of those to determine the snap.
The Aaron Rodgers story. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. It just so happens to be that all of mine are correct.
Yes. Yeah. No, I thought that was pretty interesting. All right, there you go. So Aaron Rodgers getting a little chippy, but that's always the case for him. All right. So why is this Longhorn football giving bulletin board material to the Oklahoma Sooners? We'll discuss it. We'll also dive into some NFL news notes and Nuggets. Texans show up. CJ Stroud showing his clutch gene. There's a Longhorn who dropped his diapers, if you will, and grew up over the weekend. We'll talk about that too. Jordan Whittington getting a lot of love with the Rams. We'll get into some NFL news notes and Nuggets on the other side. All that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers coming back on the Horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a Smooth Soul Monday edition of the Rodcast, courtesy of my co-host, the Idillionaire Patrick Davis, who comes up with all the musically themed days of the week, and we appreciate him for that. And a Smooth Soul Monday is to make sure that your transition from the stress-free, fun-filled weekend to the very stressful, hectic work week with all your meetings and traffic and all the adulting you got to get to. We want to make that a smooth transition instead of a traumatic one. So in order to do that, my man Patrick comes up with all the jams for a Smooth Soul Monday. He also comes up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day, and that is already posted for you on the Horns X account at the Horn ATX. Patrick, what is the topic for the big fat poll of the day?
Topic for the big fat poll of the day today: who is the MVP for Texas against Mississippi State? Arch Manning getting the lead right now at 52%. Colin Simmons in second with 22%, 18% for DeAndre Moore, and 8% for Anthony Hill.
Yep. Yeah, Anthony Hill. He did make a big splash play early in that game. In fact, people kind of forgot about it as the game went on. Colin Simmons definitely had, I think, the most impactful performance defensively. Hell, Vernon Broughton actually had a good game too. Vernon Broughton looked good at that strip sack, fumble recovery, forced fumble and fumble recovery. So good game for him. But yeah, Colin Simmons right now another level. Speaking of Colin Simmons, I don't know why he did it, but he's feeling real good about those 2 sacks he had. And the truth is, I think Colin Simmons is going to get double-digit sacks as a true freshman, which is rare. Like I said, I'm sure it's happened on the 40 acres, but it's a rare thing. But he was speaking to the media after the game. Was speaking to CJ Vogel, among many reporters, I'm sure, over at On Texas Football. That's where we got the sound, at CJ Vogel _OTF. And he was asked about Oklahoma, and he said the quiet part out loud. So now Oklahoma has bulletin board material. Can we get this, Patrick, for the people? Little Colin Simmons. Here he is in the post game.
You had a little time before the game, but OU is next on the schedule. Your first Red River. What do you think about that?
OU. I mean, they got a good squad this year. A lot of people on that team that I know. I feel like we're gonna dominate them, But at the end of the day, we gotta trust in our coaching and just get better each and every day.
Man, all right. I feel like we're gonna dominate them. All right. I mean, he's confident. Could they dominate Oklahoma? It's a rivalry game, so I would never, I'd never predict that one side's going to dominate the other because emotions run high and crazy things happen in rivalry games. But Oklahoma is going through an offensive identity crisis right now. They won that game versus Auburn. It took a lot of grit and fortitude. They won it without their top starting 5 wide receivers, and they had a missed a quarterback change. So they got some offensive identity issues right now. Defensively, they're one of the best defenses in the country, and it'll be a hell of a matchup between Sark's offense and Venable's defense because they're both 2 of the best phases, if you will, respectively in the country. But yeah, I could see Texas separating from Oklahoma, and I don't know how Oklahoma, if that game does, get out of hand a little bit, and they have to say come back and mount a comeback, and they did versus Auburn, so they came back in that game and won. But I think Texas is a different monster than Auburn would be, offensively and defensively. I don't see how they could keep up if it became more of a shootout, and the whole point would be that defense wouldn't allow any team to get into a shootout with Oklahoma because they're not going to let you score that much because the defense is that good. But Texas easily will be the best test they've had, one of the best tests they've had so far. Tennessee is in that conversation. In Tennessee, I will admit, the defense looked decent versus Tennessee. They held Tennessee in check. Tennessee won the game. But they won it because Oklahoma couldn't do anything offensively. But that Oklahoma defense, I mean, they made some plays. So they'll make some plays against Texas too. That may be the concern is that Oklahoma will look at what Mississippi State did and say, okay, we can do some of those things. We have veer and shoot DNA because Jeff Levy was just there. So they have the DNA on the roster. They got the pieces to replicate that formula literally on the roster. He was just there. They're still trying to run some of those basic principles with Seth Luttrell. So they have the ability to come with those wide splits by the wide receivers and force. Remember, I told you how they force your safeties to play in no man's land, so you can't stack the box against them, or you're going to leave too many one-on-ones in space on the outside on the perimeter. So you have to have your safety splitting the difference, and that often leaves you with lighter boxes because your safeties are going to be late to come down and force in the run game. That's what Mississippi State was banking on, and it worked. Right early on, they were able to run some power gap schemes against Texas, and pretty much because they outnumbered them at the point of attack, and that's why they kept pulling the guard, pulling that tackle, because they wanted to outnumber them on the play side, on the front side of the play. And so they would pull the offensive lineman from the backside, reallocate them to the front side of the play, therefore win the numbers advantage. Would it give them a huge advantage, I think, against Texas? No, but all they needed was to get 3 yards in a cloud of dust. That's all they were trying to do. And so can Oklahoma do that? Yes. And they sprinkled in the dual threat quarterback element. Well, what beat Texas last year? Dylan Gabriel having his best rushing performance as a quarterback in his career. That's how they broke Tennessee. Quarterback draw, quarterback scrambles. In this game, you saw a little bit from Parsons and Van Buren, quarterback run game. Well, Oklahoma, the young man they have now playing, I think his name is Hawkins. He can do that. Quarterback run game, they can sprinkle that into. So they can run the power. They can run power concepts like Mississippi State did. They can have sprinkling quarterback run game, and they have some veer and shoot DNA, so they can lighten up the box for you too. And then you want to take shots downfield when you can. Mississippi State took some shots, got behind Texas a couple of times. Malik Muhammad got beat once, and they didn't complete it though. Gavin Holmes got beat a couple of times. Once they completed, once they didn't. But that's the whole point. Once they force you to start inching closer and closer to that box, your safeties, because they got to start getting in there to be, better run support defenders. And when they do, as soon as they find you sneaking over to try to get closer and closer to the action, then they take shots over the top, and your safety will be late to get there, like Makuba was. He's a little late to get there. Safety's a little late to get there. That's all they need. You'll be a little late to get there, and then they can take the shots over the top. And SEC athletes, if Oklahoma has some health, luck at receiver, because right now they don't have any. But if they get one or two of those receivers back, then they may be able to make some plays downfield again. So Texas is a better team than Oklahoma. There's no doubt about it. But can they build upon the game plan that Jeff Lebby had against Texas? Certainly can. And I think that would be the concern going into that game. Now, can you dominate Oklahoma? I think you could. Texas could, because Sark could dial it up, and that defense, you could shell shock them and blitz them with a lot of speed. But if that doesn't happen and Texas gets a slow start offensively, and that is also possible because the defense is really good, and you could have some turnovers early. You're pretty much a one-dimensional team early because you pass to open up the run, and if your run game ain't working, makes you one-dimensional. So some things could go wrong for Texas, but I think Texas is a better team and will beat Oklahoma. Will they dominate them? I don't know about dominate. I mean, you couldn't dominate Mississippi State for 4 quarters. You dominated them for 1 quarter. That was a competitive game for 3 quarters. And they're considered a bottom dweller in the SEC. So Texas had their wake-up call, so they'll be a better team after that game, but it is the SEC. They call it the mini NFL for a reason. Them boys got their own scholarship too. Trust. Yeah. So I said Texas still gonna, I think, in my opinion, I think they got a chance to win the SEC and accomplish everything they did. I'm not going to change my tune after playing Mississippi State and them not performing up to the standard, but it does show you what Texas is up against in terms of the level of play in the SEC. That's a bottom dweller, period. New coach, everything. We ain't even gotten up to the, and we, by the way, Texas is a little bit lucky this year. They don't have to play the heavy hitters really. They got to play one heavy hitter.
I mean, hey, Kentucky's looking not bad right now.
Exactly. Great point. That's not even heavy hitter, but I think Longhorn fans are like,
you gotta watch him now.
We need to be concerned.
We gotta watch him.
We need to be concerned about
it. We were laughing. We were laughing when Toledo beat them or whatever, and you like, oh, Kentucky, you gonna walk right through that, and I don't know, because they went to the goal, they went to the end buzzer with Georgia, and then just knocked off Ole Miss.
Ole Miss got a high-powered offense, too, just like Texas. High-powered offense, some good starters on defense. Yep. Lane Kiffin just got out coached in that game. So I'm with you. Yep. And honestly, Arkansas, I don't think they're necessarily a great team, a good team, but they're going to present some problems because they got a dual threat quarterback.
Yeah.
They got some weapons on offense. They got some speed on offense. Of course, they hate Texas more than they love themselves, so they'll come in with emotional charge.
And again, it's one of those rivalry games that it's a rivalry for one team more than it is the other.
Amen to that. Exactly.
Where Texas,
yep,
I don't think
totally
I don't know if the kids, I don't know that there will be people there to tell them when they arrive, but it's not the same. You're like, I don't really like. I've never really grown up with this. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this. Yep. Like, I get they don't like us, but no one likes us, so I don't. So you're not going to get up for it as much as Arkansas. Who knows? Man, we'll make our season.
Make or break our season on this one game. Yep. They're going to pull out all the stops against Texas. Why wouldn't they? So, I just think that's a reality now, and Longhorn fans need to be ready for it. If you thought you were going to go through the SEC just molly-whopping everybody, not going to happen. Not going to happen. That was ULM. That was UTSA. That was Colorado State. That's there for a reason. And you beat Michigan. I think the way you beat Michigan and dominated Michigan, I think that was more. Trust me, Michigan is down too. But I think that was more because that was. I would say football's about matchups. That was a bad matchup for Michigan.
Yeah,
bad matchup for Michigan. It was. It's why we saw it versus USC. Right, it's better. And the quarterback situation. They finally made a change in quarterback. But they only threw for 30-some yards against USC and beat them. But I think USC ended up being a better matchup for them because Texas has way more speed. I think so, more speed than USC does, just overall as a team.
Yeah,
and that speed, you can tell Michigan they were not ready for it. I told you guys, Big Ten speed, Texas speed, and the SEC speed, very very different.
No, and I think if they would have played Alex Orji, they probably could have picked up a couple more first downs early in that game and at least not let Texas get away with it, like start to get a lead. And so you could have done more of what Mississippi State did, which is just not give Texas the ball.
Right.
Just not give them the ball. And then if you get a couple turnovers like Mississippi State did, all of a sudden the entire complexion changes because now you're getting more possessions and then you're holding the ball forever. And you're just able to – you're not going to win a ton of games like that, but you'll stay in games long enough that you give your team a shot.
And I think we all thought they were going to play Orji against Texas. We all thought – I think Texas was prepared for Orji. They were ready for it, and that would have gave them a better chance because you're right. They would have been able to do what kind of Mississippi State did a little bit of, which is just convert. So that's a good point about that. And I think maybe that's the start of the blueprint that teams are going to try to follow against Texas. And that's, by the way, that happens for everybody. By – I don't know, 6 weeks into the season, between a month and 6 weeks, basically teams just building on what other teams did successfully against you.
Yeah.
And this team had, whatever concept worked, they just kind of build on them. And then the game plan's out there about this is how you beat Texas, or at least how you stay in the game versus Texas. That'll be out there.
We saw that, that was that might have been coaching too, Sharon Moore trying to beat Texas with a game plan he thought would work versus what probably would have actually worked better.
Yep.
And then
right.
That's those game plans coming out early. Because again, that Georgia Alabama game, if you watch any of that game, you saw that game plan for Georgia coming out was really, really bad. Their game plan starting out against Alabama, and all I could say with that game was he was coaching against Nick Saban in the first half. And the problem was Nick Saban wasn't the coach.
I like that. That's a good take. That's a quality take because I think you're right about that.
In the second half, they played much better, but in that first half, he was like, "Oh, what are they going to do? Play man defense against us? We know what Alabama does." You're like, that coaching, he's on game day.
This ain't Alabama. This ain't Alabama, Jack. Yeah, no, you're right about that. It did seem that way. It seemed like once he started making adjustments, I almost feel like if that game gets forced into overtime or something, Georgia finds a way to pull it out because they had that kind of momentum. But no, that was a great game. And I said whoever won that game was going to leapfrog Texas to be number one. So I'm not surprised that Bama leapfrog. But in the manner in which it happened, lets you know this is the scary thing about Georgia too. Because Georgia, they're a little bit more beatable than they have been in recent years. I think that's pretty obvious too. But they can present a lot of the same problems that Mississippi State did. Now, not to do with their quarterback, but the power running game, they can be a power running team if they want to. They have that element.
Yeah.
But they also can decide, we need to spread them out a little bit and throw it downfield and take shots. They can do that too. Like they could do both if they need to. They have the ability to do both. That makes them dangerous. in my opinion. Like if Texas is vulnerable to one or the other, they could do either one in that game. Like Oklahoma probably won't be able to beat you with some prolific passing attack, some sophisticated pass. No, it's just going to be taking deep shots downfield, and that's pretty much it. Like they don't have a Carson Beck throwing the football, so they can't layer their passing game really. They're gonna have a fresh, a young, inexperienced quarterback who's gonna be trying to make plays with his legs, and he'll probably be largely inaccurate when throwing the football at the intermediate level. But Georgia, like I said, Georgia can give it to you any way you want it. Whatever you try to take away, and they're fine with winning the other way. They could do it. And that's what scares me a little bit about the Georgia game. Now, watching Georgia, but they're beatable.
Yeah.
Kentucky almost beat them.
Kentucky almost beat them. Alabama beat them. And that Alabama was that first half. You went, oh, yeah, we could beat Georgia. Yeah, no problem. And then you watch the second half.
Yeah.
Ah, crap.
Yeah. You better play 4 quarters.
Yeah, that's
Georgia
right. They are really good. They are really good.
That Sark run, it ain't going to matter as much versus Georgia either.
Yeah.
Because it ain't going to necessarily put them out of the game and the game's going to be over. It's like, no. That run, it just gave you a cushion.
No,
now you better close.
That'll be a big one of, going to Texas with Trey Wisner. And then if Jaden Blue can hold on to the ball, or Derek Gibson, or whoever it is in that second half, if you remember that Alabama game last year, one of the big reasons Texas won was because they could run the ball in the second half and run the ball at the end. When they got the lead, they could keep it. You're going to have that against teams like Georgia and Oklahoma, and teams like we just don't let them have the opportunity for big plays because we don't want to give them the ball back.
Yep, I agree. That's the key, and that's why the Jeff Lebby game plan was a good one. He just didn't want to give the ball to Texas, and that's really the best recipe to stall the Texas offense and to get them to avoid the run that I always talk about. And I think that's what Lebby did a good job of. It just came in the fourth quarter. Came in like the beginning of the fourth quarter, and then the game was out of hand there. All right, some Texas football conversation. I want to talk Texans. We'll talk Texans and NFL here. But first, let's get the Horn headlines. So let's get updated. Let's get educated. Let's get informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the MLB, the Astros finished their regular season winning both games against the Guardians before the game Sunday was canceled due to a long rain delay. The Astros are now set to take on the Tigers and former manager A.J. Hinch in the AL wildcard round starting Tuesday. The Rangers wrapped up their season by sweeping the Angels with several young players coming through in the final games. The Rangers finished with a 78-84 record on the season, and Nathan Eovaldi was able to pick up his 12th win of the season in the final game. In the NFL, the Texans came back to score a touchdown with 18 seconds left to beat the Jaguars and improve to 3-1 on the season. The Vikings and Chiefs remained undefeated after wins on Sunday. However, the Chiefs fear that Rashee Rice may be lost for the season. Tonight, the Titans look for their first win against the Dolphins, and the Seahawks try to stay unbeaten against the Lions. And in college football, Texas got a win over Mississippi State 35-13 with Arch Manning throwing for 324 yards and 2 touchdowns. However, they dropped to number 2 in the rankings after Alabama topped Georgia 41-34. Texas now gets a bye week to rest some players for the Red River rivalry the following Saturday. And that is your Horn headlines.
All right, Patrick, thank you for the Horn headlines. I appreciate those. Let's talk about, before we'll get back to some Texas football conversation and we get into Rod's rant. Let's talk about the Texans right now. Big win for the Texans over the Jags. And I say big win because they nearly lost this game. Even after having control of the game early on in the first half, C.J. Stroud came out firing on all cylinders. A 9-play opening drive to score a touchdown. And then they scored on 3 of their first 4 first-half possessions. Seemed like they had the game in control. And then the second half hit. Tons of penalties, self-inflicted wounds by the Texans. And also, they just couldn't stay ahead of the chains. Once again, 3rd and long came back to haunt them a little bit in this game. They had 13 third downs. Now, they did convert 53% of them. That's a lot better than their 39% conversion rate usually they have, but still 10 of the 13 third downs were 3rd and long, 3rd and 7+ yards a gain. In the last game against Minnesota, I believe all but 1 of their third downs were 3rd and long. They were at 3rd and 10+ yards to go, more than any team in the NFL in the last 2 years. So 3rd and long still an issue, but they were a lot more successful in converting those situations, but they still ended up behind actually in this game, and then looked like Jacksonville was going to hold on to find a way to win, but on the final possession, the Texans with Stroud being clutch found a way to drive down the field. 9 plays, 69 yards with 2.5 minutes left in the game. And I believe CJ Stroud was 5 of 5 on that drive. He was as clutch as he had been. He was great all game. He had 345 yards passing and had 2 touchdowns. And one of those touchdowns came. Ogunbowale scored a touchdown on that final drive there. And it was basically the Nico Collins and CJ Stroud show for most of the game. Nico Collins, 151 yards receiving. He has 12 receptions. And when he goes downfield, I mean, you can tell he's not only creating separation, but he can make the contested catch when guys are on him. He can go big body to football when he needs to. He's turning into just an all-around receiver. There's a reason he's leading the NFL in receiving yards right now through 4 weeks. He's also set a franchise record for the Texans through 4 weeks in terms of receiving yardage production, and he's on pace for over 2,000 yards right now. I don't think he'll get to 2,000 yards, so I'm not predicting that. But that's what kind of pace he's on right now through the first 4 weeks of the season. And 10 of his 12 receptions came on targets 10 yards or more down the field. So like I said, he's a vertical threat for the Texans. And here's my favorite stat about Nico Collins and CJ Stroud and their performance versus Jacksonville. Of his 151 yards receiving, 102 of them were via the scramble drill with CJ Stroud. Is this something CJ Stroud said he was trying to work on in the offseason? It is something I've talked about that is for quarterbacks, it is a weapon that you really cannot quantify, how valuable it is for a quarterback to be able to extend the play, scramble drill, making defenders have to defend for a second, 2 extra seconds. It can be absolutely debilitating for a defense. And even at first, matter of fact, the first play on the final touchdown drive, the game-winning drive for the Texans, it was a scramble by CJ Stroud. I think he is purposefully, intentionally using it now when he needs to, using his legs, extending plays. And him and Nico, they got some special chemistry, because not only does he look for Nico when he's scrambling, when he's under duress, but he looks for him on third down a lot. So when he needs the money down, he has to have it, which unfortunately for the Texans is often third and long. But because he has a lot of targets down the field, about, probably 65 to 70% of his targets are 10 plus yards downfield, third and long for him. That's territory he lives in. That's his comfort zone, actually. And he's good with the yak yards. He had 151 receiving yards. 63 of those were yak yards after the catch. He is really becoming an all-around receiver, and he is the argument right now. I don't know if there's a better bargain at receiver than Nico Collins in the league, because he's not even a top 10 highest paid receivers right now. So there's no way there's somebody that's a better bargain.
No one on their second contract.
Yes, of course. I agree with that. That's a good point. Because I guess Malik Neighbors would be in there as a rookie. But considering what they're being paid, you're right. I would say outside of rookies and guys on rookie deals, there is no better value at wide receiver right now than Nico Collins.
No.
Because he's
leading
the league.
No, he's been playing with Stephon Diggs, who's played well. He was able to get in the end zone on that run play where it kind of went one way and then realized it was going to be gone and cut back and was able to get in the end zone on that run play. So that was a good one to get him in there. At 9 targets in the game. So they used him enough well that, I don't think he's going to be getting upset on the sideline that he's not getting used, that he's not the number one guy because Nico's there, but they're using him. He's being used and used in crucial situations as well. And then I'll give Bobby Slowick a little bit of credit on this, that they did get the run game. It wasn't great. You weren't expecting to be great with Joe Mixon out, Dameon Pierce out. You really got Cam Akers, but they were able to average around 4 yards a carry. They got over 100 yards rushing. They didn't use it a lot, but it wasn't a detriment to you this week, where in other weeks it has been something that has been holding you back. It didn't advance you at all. It didn't help you, but it didn't hurt you in this game as well. And that was, man, that's all you need. If Joe Mixon is out, you just need the run game not to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Mixon comes back, then he can be a plus in the rush game as well. But right now, just don't have it be a negative. Cam Akers didn't fumble the ball. You did have a sloppy, you once again had way too many penalties. You once again had a bonehead play of Steven Sims muffin the punt return, and they get basically a free touchdown out of it after you get a defensive stop. So there still were those plays putting you behind it where it just made it harder and harder for you to win. But there were a little bit of positives. That run game, the fact that it wasn't a negative when it has been basically all last year was a negative.
Yep.
And then this year without Joe Mixon, it was a negative. So just to see them be able to get it to 3.9 yards per carry, just doing well enough is what you did.
You're right. No, you're right. So it basically it was symbolic, essentially. That's all their running game was, and that's all they needed right now. The hope is that the offensive line will start to give you more of a push up front in the running game. But right now, they just got to worry about fixing the pre-snap penalties and fixing this team overall. It's got to worry about fixing the penalties. They're still really undisciplined. 12 penalties in this game for 93 yards. You said Laramie Tunsil, you said he had 2 holes, right?
Two holes. Both in the second half.
So that would give him, because he had 9 penalties heading into that game, which was the most by a player through 3 weeks since 2000. So you add 2 more, so he's got 11 penalties on the season through 4 games. And what I thought was just, I don't know, the most damning thing. I can't believe it. I think he's doing, because he's smart. Larry Tunsil's a smart guy and a great player. I think he's doing this as a kind of an FU, a middle finger to refs. He wore red gloves, and people were like, "Well, you mean red gloves? That's just matching outfit." Guys, do you know how he has a reputation with the referees for holding, right? That he are holding, or pre-snap penalties, all that kind of stuff. And if you're an offensive lineman, no offensive lineman should ever wear gloves that loud, because if you are grabbing somebody, that's just gonna make it that much obvious. With your big red clown gloves, like scarlet letter gloves.
Yeah.
That's got nothing to do with his pre-snap penalties, but it's like, I can't believe that nobody told him, like, hey, no, man, red gloves. Coach D'Amico Ryans, like, that's probably not the best, course of action for an offensive lineman to wear gloves that loud. You want to wear gloves that match your opponent's uniform or close to it, so that when you do hold, because they hold on every damn play, it won't be so obvious.
No. What's the Patrick Mahomes said after the first game of the season? It's like, you got to wear white shoes.
You got to wear white shoes, yes, because of the tight end, right? Isaiah Likely,
who caught the ball, and then it was like his toe was out, and you could tell because he wore black shoes. And then, like, you got to wear white, and then you can't tell.
They would have been able to tell. They'd been like, you know what? I don't know where the outline is, where the out of bounds line is, and his shoe starts. I don't know where it starts and is. You know what? He's in. It sounds trivial and stupid, but I'm telling you, for Larry Tunsil, I would have thought a veteran like him and great player like him, like that, he would have thought that through a little bit. But he didn't. I don't know. Did he? I don't know if he had 2 holes in the game, right?
Yeah, both in the second half.
So my thing was that could have contributed, because they can see a little bit more clarity.
When they see red and it's outside of the shoulders.
It's an easy call to make, right? It's like, I don't have to get an up close personal view of that. I can see right here from far away.
Yeah, anyway, Kenyon Green got a few penalties in there as well. He didn't have a great. Shaq Mason even got a false start. Shaq Mason's been pretty good, and then he got a false start in one of the crucial moments. Like, come on, man.
So D'Amico saying that they're going to get the penalties squared away, that they're going to get that remedy. That didn't happen. Maybe the pre-snap penalties.
Wait. Shockingly, the we'll fix the discipline problem in 1 week wasn't a reality.
Yeah, I guess you did say it wouldn't happen, but
you can't fix problems like that in 1 week and just they're fixed. That's not how it works.
Well, that's what your boss wants to hear, so I guess that's why he said it. They're fixed.
We got it down. We got it down. We're working on it. It is going to be a process as we keep going. The pre-snaps were not as bad as they had been in previous. Laramie Tunsil didn't get any pre-snaps, so that was a big one. Is he kept getting those the legal procedures and the lined up wrong and the false start. He didn't have any of those, But again, red
That's
gloves,
progress.
you get the holding. So there is progress, but you're still getting holds. You're still getting those other calls. You just have to understand you're going to be under scrutiny. That every ref is the way I was playing. Like in basketball, if you have a reputation as a dirty player, you're going to get called for fouls all the time.
Agreed. You got it. Yeah, because exactly your reputation precedes you.
And if you're the Texans, they know that O-line gets a lot of penalties. They're watching you.
Yeah. No, they know. I'm with you. I don't know why Larry Tunsil was wearing those red gloves, considering he was the most penalized player in the NFL going into that game. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Come on. Anyway, so I'm being a little too overly critical to Larry Tunsil. I apologize about that. All right, we come back. We'll get into what I think the X-Man ability may be for one Arch Manning. We'll also talk about the defense. I think Johnny Nansen threw out another exotic look. Matter of fact, even Sark brought this up. And if we have time, we'll jump around, get into some other NFL news, notes, and nuggets. Somehow, some of them actually Longhorn related. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into some Texas football conversation. Actually, there's an NFL related topic we can get to as well. But I want to start with the game against Mississippi State, of course. And, we were just talking about Arch Manning. We talked a lot about his performance, and Pro Football Focus had him great as the top quarterback in the country in Week 5. He was that impressive in his performance versus Mississippi State. And, one of the things that I started looking at with Arch, and I even said this before he made his first start versus ULM. I said you're going to see the deep ball reintroduced to the Sark offense. Like I said, I think Sark, first of all, Sark likes the deep ball. And Sark wants to throw the deep ball. And I think ultimately when you start, looking at Arch's game, he prefers throwing the football downfield a little bit more, getting deeper into the progressions. I think he does that naturally, which I think is a really, I think, high level trait for a young quarterback. Usually you don't see young quarterbacks that can get that, deep into progressions early on. Even Quinn was criticized early on for just being kind of a one-read quarterback. And Sark said part of his pocket presence was to, or at least the development and the progression of his pocket presence was to get deeper into his progressions. And, I started looking at Arch, and I immediately it jumps off the film to you that he wants to throw the football downfield. His eyes are looking downfield. He holds on to the ball a little bit longer. I think his time to throw in that game versus Mississippi State was 2.8 seconds. And when he's got a shot, when he's got a deeper route in the progression, he's prone to try to take it. That's why we talked about the game versus ULM. He probably should have taken more of the checkdowns, take what the defense is giving you. That's one of the lessons he had to learn as a young quarterback, which I believe translated into this game. We did learn that lesson. And you had 4 deep balls in this past game versus Mississippi State. Hell, most of them to DeAndre Moore. I think you had 3 of those to DeAndre Moore. Jonte Cook ended up dropping one of those as well. But he was 3 or 4 on passes 20 yards or more in that game versus Mississippi State, along with 2 touchdowns, 96 yards. And I started tracking his deep ball progress so far this year because he has a better deep ball than Quinn Ewers, probably even right now. Like, it's naturally one of his X-Man abilities. I always talk about what does your quarterback do as well, if not better than everybody else? Like, what is that thing? And, for every quarterback, it's something different, right? Quinn's got his own X-Man abilities. His short to intermediate throws, off-platform throws are amazing. Got really quick hands in the RPO game, so he can throw from any different angle. He's got his own freaky skills, right? And data points in this evaluation. But I think one for Arch, if I'm just lining up and listing his X-Man abilities, things that he does as well, if not better than everybody else, deep ball is definitely up there. He's at 50% completion percentage right now on passes 20 yards or more down the field, which is really high. Usually the average is around 30%, 33%. Quinn's gotten better with his deep ball, but it's not naturally a strength for him. I think it's naturally a strength for Arch. And I think I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg. I'm not sure if he was really good at the deep ball as a young player and decided, I'm going to cultivate this. This is something I'm really good at, and I'm going to build my skill set around it. Or if, he just worked on it, obsessively to get good at it, and it's become something that he has kind of added to his repertoire as a quarterback that he can do really well, and now prefers to throw the football downfield. But either way, when you watch him, it's obvious he wants to go downtown. I'll give Sark some credit because Sark, I believe, is trying to. He doesn't want to, coach that out of him. I think he just wants to cultivate it so that it is something that he's a little bit more judicious about in the shots that he takes, and a little bit more calculating in the shots that he takes, which is why in this game, you look at the 4 deep shots, they all seem like they were either schemed open or they were very kind of Arch friendly, gave him like a primary. The Jonte Cook one was a target to motion. He motioned him to the number 3 receiver, which gives him a favorable matchup. Usually when Sark targets to motion, that's a primary schemed open throw. It's a first read kind of wide window throw. If you go look at the DeAndre Moore 20-yarder to start the game, that first one that didn't score, got you on the goal line, that was a stalk, block, and go. And usually stalk, block, and go is primary, one read. You know exactly where you're going. As long as you sell the fake and sell the pump fake, you should be golden there. The DeAndre Moore 49-yard touchdown seemed like, that was empty formation. It was 3rd and 9. They blitz a DB. Quarterback responsible for the free rusher. You just got to find the matchup you like. Gunnar Helm runs a stop route on the outside. I think Golden runs a seam at the number 3 receiver position. And then you have Derek DeAndre Moore, running the 9 route, a slot fade, if you will. And all Arch has to do is throw it over to the outside shoulder, which he does perfectly because his deep ball accuracy is also mind blowing. It is uncanny, his deep ball accuracy. I mean, even that one of Jonte Cook was on the money. And he wasn't off on any deep throw. He wasn't off on many throws at all. But he wasn't off on any deep throw. His only deep throws that have been off have been, some of those deep throws in that ULM game, because I think he was just taking way too many. He was, being a bit stubborn about taking what he wanted from the defense rather than taking what the defense was giving him. And this game, it was some beautiful throws, but also schemed open, because I think at that point he was willing to take what the defense was giving him, and then favorable matchups, when he got them, he would take them. And so when he's doing that, I mean, his deep ball is, in my opinion, one of the best deep balls I've seen from any quarterback here at Texas. It's pretty, it's accurate, it has a nice arc on it. So your wide receivers with a lot of speed can run under it. And I think Sark wants to make it a weapon in his offense again. When he first got here to Texas, he was big on the deep ball. He wanted to, put the fear of God in the defenses with the deep ball. And unfortunately, it just wasn't a strength for Quinn Ewers. It just wasn't a natural strength. Did Quinn get better at it? Of course he did. He's still getting better at that. You can get better at anything, but some traits are naturally kind of God-given. And I think his deep ball may be one of them. So I'm listing X-Man abilities of Arch. Deep ball is up to the top of the list. I think he's great at throwing the ball on the run too. I think he's really good at throwing the ball on the move. I think that's also one of his X-Man abilities. I like him actually as a scrambler. I think he's actually, since he throws the ball so well on the move, it makes his scrambling ability that much more dangerous and lethal, because once he's out of the pocket and moving, he can be just as accurate with a quick release, getting rid of the football. So pretty obvious, just in a small sample size. He likes going downtown. Sark wants him to go deep with the football, and Chicks dig the long ball, and so does Arch. That's part of it. All right, so that's Arch's X-Man ability. Something else I wanted to bring up, because if we talked about deep ball a lot with Quinn Ewers and X-Man and AD Mitchell last year, and how Sark curtailed the deep ball a little bit. But when the Kansas City Chiefs drafted X-Man, we thought, oh man, deep ball's coming back. It's going to be one of the focal points of that Kansas City offense again, just like it was when Tyreek Hill was there. And that is not the case at all. I'll admit when I'm wrong about something, I was wrong about that. The average depth of target, yards per attempt, a lot of those things are down for the Kansas City Chiefs. So they're not throwing the football vertically downfield like I thought they would with Xavier Worthy. That may change. Now that Rashee Rice is hurt, he's dealing with a potential season-ending injury. They got to build more of that passing game around Xavier Worthy's elite trait, which is his world-class speed. But he did show it off with a 54-yard touchdown to put Kansas City on the board in that game versus the Chargers. It was Patrick Mahomes' longest touchdown pass of his career if you're looking at air yards. 62 yards in the air, that 54-yard touchdown to Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy got to a 21.4 miles per hour speed on that route. Once he caught the football, that's the third fastest for any player in the NFL this year. So he's showing off the speed. But he actually made several key plays. He also had the 3rd and 6 crossing route catch that converted, essentially iced the game for Kansas City too, with Rashee Rice out in that game. So Xavier Worthy, buy that stock because they need him now. And it's amazing. I keep saying this. It's amazing how the Kansas City Chiefs are winning games now. They just, it's because they're not winning it pretty. Like, they're not winning pretty anymore. I mean, they were down 10 points in that game, but we all know nobody's better when they're down double digits in NFL history than Patrick Mahomes. But through the first 4 weeks of the season, if you compare this stretch, the starting stretch of games, first 4 weeks, to the first 4 weeks of any season in Patrick Mahomes' career, this is the worst stretch to start a season for him in passing yards, touchdown interception ratio, passer rating. He's actually second in interceptions right now in the NFL behind Anthony Richardson. He's got 5 of them. I think AR has 6 of them. They're not playing pretty football at all. He's so damn clutch. It just like, against the Ravens, they were clutch win there. Clutch win just past week when he was down 10 against the Chargers. That's basically what he has now. He's the most clutch player in the league, and they're probably the most clutch team in the league, but they don't play like the best team in the league. They just play like the most clutch team. When it's winning time, they just keep it close to it's time to go win the game, and nobody in the league is better at pulling out a game in clutch time. It's amazing watching them now. Because, like I said, it's a dink and dunk offense. They don't go vertically down the field. Patrick Mahomes is not having a great season either. But in the last 5 minutes, if it's within one score, you are cooked going against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And I don't know how you blow them out because the defense is too good now. The defense is they got top 5, top 10 defense. So that's not how you beat them. It's a formula that's shifted a lot, but still really, really effective. And even without Rashee Rice, I still think they're at the top of the AFC. You still got to look up at the Kansas City Chiefs. Also, speaking of former Longhorns who are stepping up, before we get to the break here, Jordan Whittington played a real crucial role for the Rams on offense. Remember, Puka Nacua hurt. You also have Cooper Kupp, who's been dealing with an injury too. With those guys being sidelined with injuries, Jay Witt stepped up, 8 targets and 97 route participation. Both numbers led the Rams. He led the Rams in targets. Like, who would have had that? Who would have thought that when he was drafted by the Rams, that in the first month of the season, Jay Witt's going to have a game where he leads the Rams in targets? Wild. And he ended up with 6 receptions, 62 yards. So they're going to need him. I mean, he is a crucial element to that offense now, especially with all the injuries they have. All right, so there you go. A little update on some of the Longhorns who are showcasing their talent in the NFL. We come back, we'll play Who Said That. That's when Patrick plays pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world, and based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, you have to identify who said that. We'll play when we come back right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the Horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a Smooth So Monday edition of the Rodcast. Thanks to Patrick Davis, my co-host that I did in there, trying to make your transition from the fun-filled, stress-free weekend to the very stressful and hectic work week. He wants to make it as smooth as possible, and thus is the purpose of a Smooth So Monday. Also, he comes up with the topic for the Big Fat Poll today. Pretty simple one. He wants to know from you, who is the MVP of the Longhorns performance game versus Mississippi State? And for you out there who are voting, we appreciate your Arch Manning, of course, dominating this vote. 53% of you say Arch Manning is the MVP, and 21% of you say it's Colin Simmons. Like Colin Simmons and what he did. Another 19% of you say DeAndre Moore and his 100-yard game and 2 touchdown performance should have given him the MVP honors. All right, let's get to who said that. That's when Patrick plays pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world. And based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, you have to identify who said that.
Moore, did you have baby oil on today?
No. We got to keep that for somebody else, bro. Yeah, that's not my question right there. I did do it as a kid, though. We can't even ask that no more, bro. It's too much going on in life right now with that, man. We can't do that. Yeah, you can't do that.
Oh, man. I'm not sure who that is.
That is Jamar Chase. He had a big catch and run where he broke a bunch of tackles. The reporter asked him, "Did you have baby oil on?" And he had to say, "No, man, we can't say that no more. We can't."
Wow, man, the Diddy reference, man. Yeah, I guess we're at that point now. You can make a Diddy reference. Diddy stuff's getting dark. I don't know how dark it is yet, so I don't know how much how much we can mock it yet, because I don't know how dark it is.
No, the baby
we
oil
still
stuff
don't know.
is,
I don't know the details.
The baby
oil, the freak offs thing. I know it's funny. I know people like. I think the actual investigator was calling it the freak offs. I'm like, he's actually saying freak offs. He said, yeah, the Diddy freak offs, and I'm like, did the actual person that's in authority say freak offs? Like, yeah, he did. So. Yeah, I don't know if I ever want to be involved in those, but there you go. A little who said that. Thanks for that, Patrick. We appreciate it. Thanks to all you guys out there for listening and for watching. We appreciate you. Remember, the revolution will not be televised. We're talking about it right here on the Rodcast. Everybody have a great night. We appreciate you. We love you. We mean that. Take care of yourselves, but more importantly, take care of each other. Until next time, hook 'em and peace.